begin with a moment of silent prayer and pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For roll call, we have a quorum. Mr. Smychik and Mr. Mary are excused. The affidavit of posting, this agenda was posted in the office of County Clerk on the second day of August 2018. Notice was sent to the West Bend Daily News, Express News, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, WTKM Radio, My Community Now, Hartford Times Press, Kewaskum Statesman, and the Milwaukee Journal. Sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Mr. Sorcy, Mr. Schleif. Any comments, questions, corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda. Next on the agenda is the action on appointment of District 11 County Board Supervisor. The Executive Committee met before the meeting here and on a 4-2 vote has recommended Mr. William Blanchard to fill the District 11 County seat. Are we ready to vote on the issue? I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Supervisor Bullowa. Do I hear? We don't need a second, correct? Supervisor Merton.
Just wanted to say that in view of the motion, and there's been no discussion or anything about it, can someone apprise the board of anything about the recommendation?
You have in front of you resume and cover letter from both of the candidates.
We don't have any.
Oh, sorry. We're a little behind. I'll wait for everyone to have it take the chance to peruse and look at it, please.
Oh, you printed, yeah, here's the. Here's the one.
Supervisor Jenkins.
Yeah, I don't know if both candidates are here, but if it's okay with everybody else, are they able to stand up and give a quick introduction to who they are, just so we get a feel for who these individuals are?
Certainly. We begin with Mr. Blanchard.
Point of order, we still don't have anything back here. They're being sent around.
Giving a limit to about 3 minutes, if you could.
Sure, absolutely.
And speak directly into the microphone.
Okay.
Not like I did.
So my name is William Blanchard. I live just a little bit west of Boltonville on Winnie Acres Drive. I ran against Parsons in the last election, was beaten. So when the opening came up, I threw my hat in the ring, and I'm very happy to have the recommendation of the executive committee. little bit about me, I just retired from the military, hence the beard. So I had 28 years of service, and I'm currently information or an application security architect for Foot Locker down in Milwaukee. And I've got 2 kids and a wife and a nice little home up on Windy Acres Drive. And if you have any questions, I'm open to answering anything.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Merkel?
My name is Jim Merkel. I don't know if this is on. Can you hear me? Okay. I've been in the district or this area for the last 25 years. I do believe your executive committee did a very good job in interviewing both of us. They went very thoroughly through it. The recommendation is 4-2. William here is Blanchard has shown a very good interest in this for a long time. And when the opening opened up, I am very willing to help. I've had a lot of business experience in the area, but again, your committee has made a very in-depth time last hour. Personally, I think you should listen to your committee for what they did, because they're going to know an awful lot more of what the two of us are for that. So appreciate the time, and one of us will be the representative, and I already told William that if he needs anything, I can help him. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if we are ready to vote, it will be by closed ballot. And the clerk will collect the ballots.
Why don't you announce that, Fred, so they know?
If there's no other nominations, then I don't believe you need to go into a closed ballot. I think the board could just vote without going through that formality, much like when you had selecting vacancies on your various committees and so forth. The ordinance says we're supposed to basically act consistently with that particular method of operation. So if there's no other nominations, I don't see any reason why you need to go to closed ballot.
So the motion on the floor works as the nomination for Mr. Blanchard.
Correct.
So if
Correct.
Unless there's another nomination, it would just proceed on, with the vote for Mr. Blanchard.
Right.
Does that make sense?
So we don't need these?
So you don't need these then?
Un-
what you're saying.
Unless there's at this moment, we don't need them.
Supervisor Martin?
Yeah, I just had, if we were going to vote, my question was, would it be a signed ballot?
No. Supervisor Bossert?
Just to be consistent with how we've acted when we've elected the executive board, I'm gonna make a motion that we suspend the rules and cast a unanimous ballot for William Blanchard.
Okay. A second by Roger. Supervisor Kiss, sorry. I have to, I was corrected at the WCA meeting that I went to for board chairs and say I should be, rather calling by first name, I should call by supervisor in the last name. So I stand corrected. Supervisor Gonery?
Yes, I was gonna nominate James Merkel for the position. So you have 2.
Okay. Okay, now we will vote.
Now it is a paper ballot.
Now
No
it's a paper
signature.
ballot.
No signature.
Look around, collect.
there's more. Do we have everyone's besides the one right there?
Has everyone filled out a ballot? Has everyone filled out a ballot? And passed it toward the center? Any more ballots available out there? Okay.
Ready? Yep.
William Blanchard. James Merkel. James Merkel. Merkel. William Blanchard. James Merkel. Jim Merkel. William Blanchard.
I don't know. It starts with a B, so
Got a vote that starts with a B. Blanchard.
it's in cursive, in not legible cursive.
William Blanchard. William Blanchard. William Blanchard. William Blanchard. William Blanchard. James Merkel. William Blanchard. William Blanchard. William Blanchard. William Blanchard. Jim Merkel. James Merkel. James Merkel. William Blanchard.
William Blanch, oh, can you turn this on, Tom?
Says it's on.
William Blanch, it's not on.
It's on.
Is it? Oh, it's just not very loud. William Blanchard won with 14 votes to 9.
Okay, Supervisor Blanchard, will you come up to take the oath of office, please?
So just have you stand right here. Does that work? You can have this copy, and I'll have you raise your right hand. I, the undersigned, having been appointed to the office of Washington County Board Supervisor, District 11. You can repeat that.
I, William Blanchard, having been appointed to the office of Washington County Board Supervisor, District 11,
But have not yet entered upon the duties thereof,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you. Would you like to sign both copies?
John, your Sergeant Arms? You can, you need to escort him to his chair. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. To your seat.
Supervisor Blanchard, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no objections, I'd like to move resolution number 31, a commendation of Jane F. Wire, to be read now. See no objections?
Whereas Jane F. Wire has contributed more than 32 years of loyal service to the citizens of Washington County, and whereas Jane F. Wire has chosen to retire from her present position of Certified Nursing Assistant at Samaritan Health Center, now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to pay tribute and to commend Jane F. Wire for her 32 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to her heartfelt thanks for her many accomplishments and successes. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Jane F. Wire as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
Stand with her. Jane.
Hello.
Thank you for your time in the service.
You're welcome.
32 years, I have to ask this. Did you start when you were 12?
No, no.
Well, this is a small token of appreciation for the time you spent here. It's not much, but it is a reminder of your time here.
Remembrance.
Yep. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. You want to say anything, or?
I'd like
you
to
know-
thank Samaritan and Washington County for allowing me to do my job as long as I have. And I will miss my co-workers and the residents, and it's been an experience.
Great. Super. All right. Next order of business is the Baker. Oh, yes, we do. A motion, Supervisor Jenkins and Supervisor Schleif. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Sorry about that. Next order of business is the Baker Tilly audit report.
Good evening, all. My name is John Knaple. I'm a partner with Baker Tilly. We completed our first year as the external auditors of the county, and I'm here to present a brief summary of the results of that audit. I believe you have received the documents that came out of the audit, the comprehensive annual financial report. There was a report entitled Communication to Those Charged with Governance and Management, and then also a report on federal and state awards. I also provided, and you should have on your laptop, a document called Audit Results. It's just a high-level summary. Typically, when I go over the results of an audit with a client, I go through a summary such as this, and then just open it up for questions of the board. So that's what I'll plan to do this evening, unless I hear differently. So proceeding on on the handout, we just first page, just a table of contents of the things that I will touch on this evening. First section is the status of our audit. And on page 2, the status of the audit, we've completed the audit of the financial statements as of December 31st, 2017. Our audit was performed in accordance with the auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. Also, the standards applicable to financial audits contained in government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. Our opinion on your financial statements is referred to as an unmodified opinion, or commonly referred to as a clean opinion. Means that your financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with the accounting standards that you have to follow. The county also submits its comprehensive annual financial report to the Government Finance Officers Association as part of their certificate program. The county's done that and has received that reward in the past 15 years, and certainly anticipates receiving it for the 16th year. If you wanted to start looking at that large document, the comprehensive annual financial report, I suggest that you refer to the pages 15 through 28, which is entitled Management's Discussion and Analysis. That's a high-level review prepared by management of what happened during the year. What are the main points of what happened? And that would be your first point of starting through that document to get an overview of what transpired. We also completed the audit of the compliance audit of the federal and state grant programs that you are involved with. The audit was performed in accordance with the aforementioned standards and the uniform guidance and state single audit guidelines which must be followed. And we've also issued an unmodified opinion on your compliance with those grant programs. Turning the page, going on page 4, just a high-level summary of your general fund, which is your main operating fund of the county. I won't go through the individual numbers, just to say that the revenues and transfers in had a $3.2 million variance. Primarily, that variance was the result of transfers coming in from other funds to the general fund. The big item was transfer coming in from Human Services. Expenditures and transfers out, again, a positive variance of $2.2 million, favorable variance, really across all functions of the county in the general fund. There wasn't one particular function or department that stuck out that created that particular variance, but it was just across the board. Overall, you increased your fund balance in the general fund by $2.6 million, and at the end of the year, it stands at $21.6 million. The next page just shows a graph of the history of the general fund balance and where it's been, the components that make up it. There are certain parts of your fund balance that are considered non-spendable. You've already spent them, or for prepaid amounts, or inventories, you have long-term receivables that won't be collected within a year. There are also balances that are restricted as to the purpose by law, balances that are committed that this board has committed those funds for, and then assigned, and then the unassigned, which is available for use as the board deems appropriate. And then the individual numbers are shown down below. The percentages aren't there, but the unassigned fund balance has risen from 50% of the total in 2013 to 74% of the total in 2017. And your unassigned fund balance is a barometer or indicator of the financial strength of the county and how you can weather unanticipated expenses or revenues that do not materialize that you anticipate, contingencies, etc. So it is a barometer of the financial health. Continuing on page 6, just again high-level summaries of two of your major funds, the County Roads and Bridge Funds and the Human Services Funds. County Roads had a net increase of $42,000 with an ending fund balance of $1.9 million. Human Services Fund decreased about $32,000, has $281,000 carrying forward. And then the non-major governmental funds, you have a number, and they're listed there, of other funds just of lesser activity, not necessarily lesser importance, but just lesser volume of activity that transpires through them. And you can see that in total, there's $10.7 million in those activities that are carrying forward into 2018 and beyond. And you can see the individual amounts there. The one fund that does have a deficit is the Information Services Fund of $242,000. So at some point in time, the county will have to address that particular item. Then on page 7 is a summary of what we call business type activities, and those are funds that run similar to business enterprises, and that is your highway funds, Samaritan Health Center, Fields of Washington County, and the golf course. And then you have some other funds that are strict. They're called internal service funds, and the principal function of those is to provide services to other departments within the county, health insurance, and so forth. That type of activity. You capture that all in one fund, and then you charge it out to the various funds that use those services. Again, I won't go through the individual numbers, but you can see that the highway had a positive $88,000 surplus for the year. Samaritan Health had a decrease of 1.4. Fields of Washington, a decrease of 39,000. And then the golf course increased its equity by $74,000. The fund position, or the net position you see there, is not really all spendable, because some of these funds have capital assets that make up the fund equity, so you can't really spend capital assets. But that's all part of how business type activities report their results. The internal service funds, just a note, one of the new items that occurred during the year was the implementation of a new accounting standard, GASB 75, bringing in the liabilities relating to other post-employment benefits. All of that activity is reflected in the internal service funds. And the net impact of that really decreased your equity by about $573,000. That number is determined by an actuarial study that the county had performed during the year. On page 8, this shows what the long-term debt of the county is and its ability to borrow under state statute. Your ability to borrow is 5% of your equalized value, or a limit of $730 million. You have outstanding $8 million. So there's a legally you could borrow an additional $722 million. That represents, I'm not suggesting that, I'm just saying you have the ability to. Your trend has been very favorable. 10 years ago, your outstanding debt represented 4.7% of your ability to borrow, the debt limit. As the end of 2017, it's only 1.13%. So it's gone down substantially over the last 10 years. Again, another barometer or indicator of the fiscal health of the government is their ability to borrow on an as-needed basis. You certainly have the ability to borrow if the need would arise on a general obligation basis. Page 10 summarizes the results of the compliance audit. Again, in accordance with federal and state regulations, we look at the compliance of certain grant programs. You had expended almost $7.8 million of federal money during the year and $8.3 million of state money. We expressed an unqualified opinion on your compliance with that, although we did have a couple of findings. They don't affect the opinion, but they must be reported under the standards relating to segregation of duties, and then some review, some processes that need to be in place relating to certain grant programs for reviewing reports, and then there was a contract that exceeded the expenditures exceeded the original contract that should have been amended during the year. So these have been discussed with management, and management will certainly address those as they move forward.
Supervisor Buzzard.
So on the segregation of duties, obviously from an accountability standpoint, that's important from an internal control standpoint. Are you reporting the specific findings to Administrator Showman so that he can begin implementing corrective action?
The finding itself is included in the communication to those charged with governance and management, so it brings out the specifics of the issue, and really, it's very solvable, the issue. It just takes some changes in the process.
Yeah.
So I'll defer to Margie on this, but in administrative committee next week, or is it the week after? We'll see an internal controls policy proposed to them that's immediate response to this, so she can also speak
Okay.
to it in more detail.
The specific finding in question right now was within our fields area. It was just an issue that one person was doing all of the billing procedures. It did not line up with the other procedures within the Samaritan area. They've since started to implement some changes to segregate those duties properly across staff. So we've already addressed the issue.
Okay, good. Anytime we're talking about internal controls, I want to make sure they're in line, so thank you.
Yeah, we agree.
Supervisor Dice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Margie, I'm glad this has been taken under, that it's been corrected. That's important. My question is, how long was it like this? How far back does this go?
Hard to say. It's probably been a little while. There's been some changes in the staffing structure over there, specifically in their accounting area. We believe it happened when, I forget his name, when he, Jeff Werner, yes, when he retired. So we think it occurred at that point, but we can't say for sure.
Okay.
I would like to preface, we didn't find any problems other than the fact that this particular control was missing.
No, my concern is I know this is a basic rule of accounting to make sure that you have those duties separated and it's, I would hope that that would have been jumped on a lot sooner than it has been, so I'm glad it's corrected now. That's a good thing.
Supervisor Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to get some unequivocal answers, really easy on tape, so I can clear up some misconceptions that some constituents have, especially in social media. Is it your opinion that this county is financially sound and stable?
Your financial statements demonstrate a very strong financial position for the county.
Are we in any way on the precipice of bankruptcy or going under or having to sell our building in order to survive?
I would have to say no. You are not on that precipice.
Okay, and I don't mean to be so flippant. Unfortunately, I see a lot of people who've made some pretty wild accusations about the finances here in the county. And so I want to have it stated unequivocally that our financial policy is sound and that the direction that we're moving in is quite good. We would agree with that?
I would say that you are a very well-run county. It is demonstrated by really the very few findings that we had in our management letter. The financial position of the county is strong. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict the future, but
Understood.
again, your financial statements are very, very solid. And I would say that any user of the financial statements would come to the conclusion that this is a very sound financial run government.
In your opinion, given other counties in the state, I'm not sure how many you deal with, do we come in, where would you say we would rank out of the 72 or how would you?
You know, I'd have to know what kind of, what basis you would want me to rate them on. I mean, we don't audit all 72 counties.
Right.
I mean, we audit probably about 20 of them. And
Of those 20.
and I don't see the financial statements of all 20. I only see financial statements of the 3 that I do.
Okay.
3
Well, I
counties
think
that I'm
that's
involved in.
actually good enough. Like I said, I was just trying to dispel some social media rumors and myths about exactly how we run the government in this county. And I think you've done a great job of that. Thank you, sir.
Well, I don't prepare the financial statements. I don't make the numbers up. Those are prepared by management. So the financial statements are management's representation of what has happened. And we simply perform the audit and give an opinion that the numbers that are reflected in the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with the standards that you have to follow. So,
Supervisor Mahalik?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have 3 documents that you provided. The last of the 3 documents, if you click on it, anybody wants to follow along, is the communication to those charged with governance and management. When I read through that and you go to page 4, It's actually listed as your page 1, but it's page 4 of the documents that we have. It did mention the third paragraph, a deficiency in internal control exists when the design of operation of a control does not allow management employees in the normal course of performing their assigned functions to prevent or detect or correct misstatements on a timely basis. What you're doing, or what you're actually pointing out, is that there is, in your term, a material weakness. This is in the second paragraph. A material weakness or significant deficiencies may exist that were not identified. I just wanted to know if you believe that, now we stated we're addressing these. Our finance person let us know that this is being addressed. If you believe that you have given us the information necessary to assist us in that process, so we can be sure that everything is there, because I'm just going now to page 11 of 29, that list where it's comments and recommendations. You have listed here specific areas where your audit had pointed out, which was the medical examiner, transit, county attorney, county clerk, county treasurer, and district attorney, and yes, our sheriff's department, where billing is not reviewed by someone other than the individual who prepares the bill. So we have all sorts of different departments that are looking to make these improvements. Will you be assisting us in that? Is that something that you include in the audit?
If we are engaged to assist
Okay.
you, we will do so, but as part of the audit, we provide the information that this is our observation through our tests and procedures, that this is the situation that exists. We then provide that to management to evaluate it, make changes as in accordance with what the information that's provided. Most clients will do that on their own. They won't necessarily engage the auditor to do that, because to do that would be outside the scope of what you initially have hired us for.
Okay,
So there'd be an extra charge.
understood.
Yeah.
Then I would ask.
But we're certainly here to help.
Okay, and then I would ask Josh, is that something that we believe that we can address internally? Has already been addressed, I think, as part, or something that we will have to contract out for that assistance, or something that will disappear by our next 2018 audit?
I think that what Margie addressed just a moment ago is going to correct this in the short term.
Right, okay.
Yes.
And so, meaning that once it's corrected in the short term, there is no long-term issue?
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Gauss.
Thank you. Going back to your comment about the change in GASB and the unfunded, was it unfunded liability of a particular benefit of 573-some thousand? Is that
Yes,
a one-time or a long-term? I mean, is it?
It's a long-term liability. It's not due and payable. There's nothing that you would do to pay to eliminate this. The liability that exists relating to your other post-employment benefits is what's called an implicit rate subsidy, meaning you have retirees that are on the plan that are paying the same rate as active employees. And the way the actuarial standards and the accounting standards now look at that, the active employees are subsidizing the retirees because the actual cost of providing health insurance to retirees is higher than an active employee because they're younger, in theory. That's the general rule. So that subsidy, that difference in the cost of providing health insurance, the cost isn't the premium, the cost are the benefits that you are paying for that individual. So that difference is what's being calculated and reported and reflected in your financial statements now. Yours is very small. I just completed another county audit where the number was 199 million. Yours is 500,000.
Thank you.
So.
Continue.
Does that answer your question? I just, real quickly, I'll finish up. Pages 12 and 13 talk about the things that we, under our professional standards, must communicate to you as those charged with governance and management. And it's all contained in that separate document. I've bullet pointed here the individual items. The only things that are, what I would say, not standard disclosure or that here would be the implementation of the new accounting standard, GASB 75, and the fact that we did find one adjustment to the financial statements that we did not ask management to make. We don't believe it materially misstates your financial statements. It was an error that occurred back in 2016, which was prior to our being your auditors. There were some capital assets that were brought on, but due to really a computer glitch, were fully depreciated in the first year. There were about $2 million of assets that were fully depreciated instead of being depreciated over, I don't have probably about 20 years. So it doesn't, in our opinion, it doesn't materially misstate your financial statements. Therefore, we did not ask management to make that adjustment, but we are required under our standards to tell you about it, that occurred. So this will not, it won't be a continuing disclosure. We disclosed it once, it's done, it's over and done. So that'll go away next year. But those are the only two things in that document that I would say are not standard verbiage, standard disclosures. We didn't have any problems. We didn't have any issues with management during the course of the audit and that type of thing. And then the last part of the handout is just the individual comments, the discussion of the comments, the other comments that we had in that document. Some of them are just informational for you to know about new accounting standards coming down the road, or the other comments relating to the segregation of duties or the controls that we think that should be looked at and addressed. So again, it's just a repeat of what's in that original document. So I think I'll just open it up to other questions if there are any. And
Any questions? Any more questions? Seeing none, thank you.
thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we'll move on to Washington County Parks Fiscal Sustainability Plan presentation. Thank you. Hi, Jamie.
Good evening. While this is loading, I'm going to hopefully try to buzz you through this, and I feel like you've been seeing a lot of parks lately.
For us, but we didn't. Yeah.
So I'm going to actually let that load. Kind of start talking about this. So, good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm going to just very quickly go through some of the highlights of the second year of the fiscal sustainability plan that was included in your packet. For those of you on Public Works, I apologize because you're going to have pretty much heard the same presentation once already, as the committee discussed this and kind of hit the major highlights of the plan at their meeting last week. So I just kind of want to start it by very quickly recapping 2018 and talking about the highlights of the plan, which started with the divestment of non-priority parks. We made some solid progress on that this year. Closed on Aaron this week. We received the check. We're working on selling 2 more, vacating another, transferring another, which you'll see. So we've been moving on that. This plan continues that progress and kind of puts forward the next steps. Implementing the park fees. So last year we implemented a new revenue stream for parks. The chart you see is actually 2 weeks old. In the last 2 weeks, we've taken this number to almost 77,000 with an additional 180 permits. So it's about $2,000 a week in the past couple weeks. So we're really happy with that. In the first year, we've seen a strong showing of support for some of the parks, particularly Homestead Hollow and Yar, of which we're tracking the dollars by park. So in the budget, you'll actually see our percentages broken out and the cost recovery of expenses and revenues by park for the first time. So we're excited to show you that next month. We implemented some new revenue generating ideas, improved the idea behind actually using some of this revenue stream to improve our parks. The dog park, probably the biggest, the Sandy Knoll Disc Golf, the beer gardens, which were pretty popular, and there's a remaining tax levy support of $375,000 was what was left in 2018. So I'm going to very quickly try to play a video for you. Did that not work? What? I like this video
For us,
because
but we
you
didn't
can
know how-
see some of the, there's shots.
If you're a fan of the Washington County Parks,
There's shots of the beer garden in here, which you can kind of see the support for those of you that weren't able to attend it. There's some shots of the new dog park. I know that some of these parks aren't necessarily, if they're not in your area, places that you haven't been. But they really have been in front of the voices of several of our residents, looking and in as good of shape as they've ever been this year. So we're pretty proud of that.
Washington County Park System, by now you've probably heard of the park fee. And you're
I had this problem last time. I'm gonna just let this.
If you're a fan of the Washington County Park System, by now you've probably heard of the park fee. And you're probably asking yourself, why would you ever consider a park fee? For over the past decade, we've been trying to respond to taxpayers' requests for lower property taxes. Good parks are a high priority for us, but we didn't know how to fund them. We were faced with a decision between getting rid of our parks altogether, raising property taxes, or creating a new fee. The answer was obvious. We were going to create a new fee and make the best possible park system we could have.
It's with that sentiment that our county board did something bold and opted to take a risk and directed parks to work towards controlling our own destiny. If we cut our own funding, we don't have to sit back and wait for someone else to do it. Here in Washington County, we're working towards developing a sustainable park and trail system that's well maintained and safe, improved, and strategically expanded while being financially responsible and improving quality of life. The park's fiscal sustainability plan aims to make our park system independent of the tax levy. We will be able to use our park entrance fee in addition to shelter reservation revenues, boat launch fees, and other miscellaneous revenues to not only maintain our parks, but also build the amenities that residents want. Our plan is allowing us to transform our operation and innovate at a faster pace than ever before in government. During the first year of the plan alone, we are piloting beer gardens, constructing a new dog park, posturing Sandy Knoll Disc Golf Course to rank nationally among courses, all while receiving community support like we've never experienced in Washington County. So I know that's only 2 minutes. Okay, so that's enough about 2018. I'm going to talk
Florida. Beauty, sunshine, and beaches. Lots of people in America are moving here, and for good reason. It's a great place.
Okay, so I'm going to buzz through the highlights of what you're going to see in the budget if you approve the 2019 through 2021 plan. And there's some things in here.
Supervisor Jenkins?
Thanks. First off, whoever started that voiceover had the voice of an angel, so thank you. No, I just wanted to comment that I appreciate that you put out that video. I've had a couple responses, obviously, over the summer, and I've used that as a nice tool to educate, as many people as I can. So when I've gotten emails, maybe not too happy about the fee, I've only seen success in sharing that video and just giving them a proper understanding of what's going on. So I wanted to thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. So the 2019 plan in your packet, it's a little bit different. So last year when we put out the first version of the plan, it was a 3-year plan. You might have noticed it's still a 3-year plan. So we have backed down our targets somewhat. So in totality, you're now seeing 4 years to get off the tax levy. And there's a chance next year it might turn into 5 years, depending on how successful we are as we slow down this. And I don't say that to scare you. We're trying to be as aggressive as we possibly can, but we also want to make sure that we're realistic and that we accomplish and we're successful. So you'll see next year we're shooting for another $150,000 tax levy reduction, all in the form of new revenues. So, that's requiring us to work pretty hard this year and next year in terms of how we're going to generate another $150,000 of revenue. So some of those things, and some of them you would see the revenue in 2019, and some of them are actually planning ahead to see the revenue in 2020 and 2021. So some of what's in there in terms of implementation next year, evaluating the park user fee and the enforcement as we continue to sort of move forward with that model, how it's working, what tweaks and adjustments we need to make. You see in red, this is in here because we wanted to make sure we acknowledged it. We really don't know how the county board is what direction they're gonna go. If the direction adds property to the park division, we will need to spend a little bit of our resources planning for how that fits into this fiscal sustainability plan and what we're gonna do in the short term. Enhanced communication and marketing. And then, of course, we have our bike and pedestrian plan happening, which actually kicks off next week is the first public workshop. So, plan highlights. So, Glacier Hills Hall, we're proposing a rate increase, a substantial rate increase for this rental area, in addition to chapel flooring and an air conditioning unit. So I know that, that's been somewhat controversial in the past. The Glacier Hills Hall in 2018, we're projecting a rental revenue for the hall of $75,000 in 1 year. This is just something we hear over and over again from the users, and so as we look to increase that rate and make it, sort of that destination place, there right now, I would say, at least 6 weekends that I'm aware of this summer, they've rented their own portable air conditioning units. So that clearly is telling us that we're not we could buy one and raise the rates and people would pay for it. So
Supervisor Kelly, just a comment?
What is the current rate and what is the expected new rate?
So the rates will go before the Public Works Committee next month, but I can preview that for you and tell you that right now in peak season, we rent this out for the 3-day weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, including the chapel, which is the space for the wedding. So you get all of that for roughly $2,400. So we're looking at, during the peak season, doubling that amount. And then right now, we do run, if we have available weekends in a shorter term, so people book weddings 18 months out, but if we're 6 months out and we have availability, we do run promotions and discounts on those weekends to try to get them reserved.
So you fill it up.
That's the goal, yes.
Supervisor Schleifen.
Do we have an idea what the air conditioning unit will cost us?
20 grand.
Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you. Having paid for 4 weddings over the last 4 years, I've become an expert at what this costs. So the rate that you quote, and you're saying that that's for 3 days for $2,400 is very competitive. The doubling of the rate, you say, so you'd be approximately $5,000 for the 3 days. Would that include the fact that you're looking at putting in the air conditioning?
What we kind of paired them. That, in our plan, the discussion with the committee is in our budget, you will see both the purchase and the rate increase in the future is sort of, we're pairing it together. So we're budgeting to put in the unit.
Right, and therefore that is what would cause the rate increase, is what we could say, or how it would be marketed then as a new air conditioning, only $5,000 for 3 days type of thing.
Right.
So, okay.
And we may get a lot of pushback from that and find we have to lower the rates, and we would do that.
Wait to see how the market responds before you worry about a couple of emails and telephone calls. That is still a very competitive rate.
Right, we believe so. Just to clarify, the green bubbles up in the corners, they reference the pages in the actual plan if you are wondering where the stuff is coming from. So another somewhat item that's in there is the planned renovation of Homestead Hollow Barn, upper area, which would make this rentable for the wedding market target. So this is a substantial revenue generating item and something that we're as of right now including. Ackerman's Grove Vacation Rental by Owner. So currently there's a 3-season shelter in Ackerman's Grove on Little Cedar Lake. It is relatively small, so it's not a huge property, but we are looking at a slight renovation to make this a 3-season rental as well. This is one that we still have a little bit more work to do in terms of outreach and education with the public and making sure that this item works. Page 8, so this item is soliciting proposals for non-metallic mining partners near the former non-metallic mining site at Heritage Trails. So, and this was similar when this went to the committee in the form of this plan. There has been a limited amount of actual work that's been done by me or my staff on determining if this is a feasible idea related to reaching out to the private sector.
I haven't heard from you in a while.
We opted to wait until the plan went through. So, you know, we had that discussion. Do we email some of the non-metallic miners and kind of see what their feelings are on this? So you can see on this map, you can kind of see, if you look at the dark red line that's going around the sheriff's current shooting range and then where the yellow is, that was the former mining site when this property was an active mine. Now you can see the red part, which is the sheriff's shooting range, and the purple part, which we're saying could be potential new mining area. So it's roughly 16 acres that we think possibly might be of interest to somebody to mine. So the idea here is that we feel that out, put out some feelers, see what kind of interest there is in that, and look at the possibility of doing that in the future. And then just some minor points. So the beer gardens, it is in there. I know that was something we piloted this year. We've seen an extremely good response in terms of the resident enjoyment of those. So that continued operation of those are in here. Naming rights and sponsorships is something that we are putting into that $150,000 target as a substantial amount. Which is a project that it will be for our team to reach out and try to generate that type of revenue. So I know this is something where we've talked about how do we leverage relationships with the private sector and or businesses. So if you know anybody or you know anybody that can help build those relationships or has connections that you can put me in touch, that'll be something that I am working on or we are working on in terms of securing additional private sector partners. Partnering for programming. So we started this year, and we have taken a pretty solid position as a department that we're not a city rec department, and we're not really in the interest of hiring seasonal staff and running any recreational programming. But there have been various players throughout the county who are interested in running recreational program to drive users to our parks. So you will see this fall for the first time, the rec department in Germantown is going to put on a fall festival in Homestead Hollow County Park. So trying to build that support for paying the user fee, coming there, seeing the amenities, and making it an active place. Other examples of this include the rec departments using the parks for programming locations. We're in contacts for trying to get some racing that might happen. There's been some other beer gardens is an example of private sector activities that are now coming to these parks. And then you see on page 9 and 10, there's an amenity enhancement list related to things that we would like to do to see additional improvements if dollars become available or sponsors become available for those items. The one that we are talking about and looking to begin some public discussions about in 2019 would be a dog park in Sandy Knoll. There's an area there that we think is good, and we have a good feel now for what the cost is of that, and the expertise in terms of timing, but we are concerned about workload, so it is just one of the projects that's in there kind of on the hopper. I mentioned this before, but we amended this actually at committee, that we are gonna provide a written summary to the committee in September. We put in here where we'll be discussing the transfer of Gaydon Park in September, but we're gonna actually discuss options of the divestment of each of the special use parks and recommend future park designations to the committee in September and October of this year, so that those discussions, we basically kick these off of this plan and into a separate discussion. But we are doing that, and there will be some that we might not have a good option for, and we end up deciding that we're gonna keep these or do that, but all of those currently being looked at. And then the next steps is the 2019 budget would specifically recommend the items discussed in the plan. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Supervisor Murray?
In analyzing all of this, I commend you for your foresight and all your future revenues that you expect to anticipate raising. But my question is, what if the parks cannot sustain itself with the anticipated revenues, and you need to go back and ask for more dollars on your levy? Where do you think those dollars will be coming from?
So I worry about this because I think I say, times are good right now. And I do worry about that we would see sale decreases or private sector partners decline. And the golf course is actively working to guard against the same type of times get bad, people golf less type of a scenario. So to answer your question is, it's our hope that we can build a fund balance and be strategic enough to think through some guarding of that. And there is going to be some of that built into my 2019 budget. Right now, I'm actually projecting more than $150,000 of additional revenue, of which we're keeping some of that for one-time expenses. That will be the first things cut out of our budget if we can't meet revenue targets. So I think there's some strategy that goes into that. But to answer your question, I will be back in front of you, hopefully in advance, letting you all know that is sort of the direction that it's going, letting the administrator know, hey, our sales are 50% down right now. What adjustments do we want to make? How do we want to handle this? And that will be a discussion that we'll have to make as a county. Hopefully, we don't ever get in that position.
As you know, I'm not in favor of park charges and things like that. And so, to increase park fees would be an option, but is it fair to the public to anticipate that park fees may increase if we can't sustain ourselves?
I think practically speaking, what will happen if that becomes the case is we will, number one, have a fund balance policy for this fund. It's frankly just too new to expect them to have sufficient funds to be able to do that. But subsequently, if it got so bad that there was a large gap, we're coming back to the county board, and it's a discussion about property tax levy or a general fund transfer, and that's the simple answer. There's no other way. Those are really the only other two options.
What I don't want to have happen is that our grass gets very tall and our buildings look terrible because we don't have sufficient staff to mow the grass, or in winter that the parking lots do not get plowed in time because last winter we had some of those situations that occurred, and we did have some lawns that were terrible looking, and the public comments about, can't you keep your grass mowed? It really looks terrible for a public entity to have their places look like that. I'm sure those are things you don't want to hear. So are we going to be able to support what we're doing with the staff that we have? Or, I don't want to see you having to cut more staff and have your department not be able to do what it needs to do.
I believe you've seen the bottom. I really do. I feel like, actually in 2018, we added seasonal staff. We had a really, really strong seasonal crew this year. So there were actually more people tending to the county grounds. And I think we went through a major leadership change. We had a lot of knowledge lost from park workers, Scott Yar, Bert, Randy, Mike Cactro. I mean, the list goes on of the knowledge that was lost. And I think that it's realistic to expect that there's going to be some learning curve as you put in new management related to how we're going to care for things. And I expect that to be, that what you see outside when you walk out or you walked in today should be that is about where we're at currently, and it shouldn't be any less than that going forward.
We shouldn't have the weeds outside that are 3 feet tall either. But, you know, if you don't have the staff, you know, that's the thing that people are told. You don't have the staff to operate and do those things. Doesn't look good for us. I'm not criticizing you, Jamie. It's a matter that I think needs to be addressed.
Thank you. Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank you for your comments. I think they were spot on as far as going in the right direction, doing what we can, hiring the staff, making up for that. As regards to Supervisor Merton's thing for fees, those of us who do live in municipalities who spend a lot of money on parks appreciate the fact that those townships or villages who choose not to have an extensive park system are actually now paying for it. Because we welcome everybody in our parks. You don't have to live in the city of Hartford to enjoy the parks that we have, and we pay a great deal of money to keep them up and to keep them going. But it's straight out, and I've knocked a lot of doors in the city of Hartford, and there is some use, but most of the use of county parks actually would lean more toward the golf course, and not necessarily the other county parks. They go to the state park. We have a beautiful state park sitting right on our doorstep with Pike Lake. So, but we're paying the same amount of taxes, I guess is what I'm saying. So the fact that we've actually set those up for those of us who provide a strong municipal park system, we appreciate now that that cost is shared by the people who actually use the county park system. So, thank you.
Just an interesting fact, 4 of the 5 major complaints that I've taken have actually been from non-residents of the county.
Well, there you go.
So how can you do this to us?
Right.
I was too slow on my draw. To respond to your comment also about the 3-foot high weeds, we've had that conversation. We had it in March. And at the executive committee meeting this coming month, Chairman Krefall is appointing a ad hoc committee that is going to look at a long-term landscaping plan. And I know there's a couple of county board supervisors that are going to be a part of that. So breaking down different areas throughout the county grounds to address. You might have noticed when you came in over by the PAC, Jamie's staff, the team over there did a ton of work taking out a whole lot of really, really, really overgrown shrubberies and things of that nature. So there needs to be a plan that requires limited maintenance, because what you have right out in front of our building now requires a lot of maintenance. And we don't, as you mentioned, we don't have the staff to be able to do that. So there is a committee who will be taking a look at that.
Supervisor Bosher.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of throw a curveball here. I realize I didn't ask this ahead of time, give you any heads up, so if you don't have these answers, that's okay. But, this is our first year doing park fees. How long has Waukesha County been doing park fees? Do you know
30 plus
offhand?
years.
Okay, and how successful is that working for them? Are their parks fully self-sufficient?
So when I had this conversation, it was dated. It was when we were starting the implementation, so it was probably 1.5 to 2 years ago. And the short answer is no. They have a 30% cost recovery-ish target. This is off my memory, so don't quote me on the numbers, from their board, of which they deliver roughly a 50% or 60% cost recovery. And that's been sort of their threshold that they keep working towards. And so a lot of the dialogue that we had when I met with him was a lot about sort of the trust that you're being fiscally prudent, you're trying to recover as much cost from users as you possibly can, and sort of that build of, they kind of felt like they were in that zone and that they had a good working relationship, and then they, that they were constantly working towards that. But the goal of 100% cost recovery is unique in the state.
Right, and some of that cost recovery is coming from the golf course, from the sale of parks, from all these other sources, and not just the park fees as well. Is Waukesha County doing a lot of those other things, like beer gardens, like other cost recovery? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, and their park system is more extensive than ours, or about the same?
It's much more built. They
Okay.
have beaches and lifeguards and.
There's a
So-
reason they can only get to 30 or 50%.
So, the bottom line, I didn't want us to get caught up in doom and gloom when we're exceeding our targets so far. And we have a model that is working pretty good in Waukesha County, even if not perfectly a match for our model. Thank you.
If we begin, everything that we do in Washington County is about a third of what Waukesha County does. When you look at our tax levy, when you look at our number of employees, when you look at our population, everything's about a third. And so if we start to achieve our potential, which we think is a third, we're probably talking at somewhere close to double where we're at now. Now that's, all cylinders are clicking and the economy's good and everything's good and right, but, so we've got a lot of work to do, but if we achieve the same potential like we do in every other category of the county, we should be somewhere close to that area, which that lines up with the plan you just saw.
Supervisor Basil?
Thank you. Hey, Jamie, as long as I've been on the board, I know that the dumpsters at the county parks are always a dumping ground for everybody that throws their garbage in the dumpsters. Construction waste, furniture. Now that there's a park entrance fee, has that diminished some?
Yes.
So the cost of spending all these monies on these dumpsters, we're starting to actually fill with our own stuff and not everybody else's. No, there's a savings. Thank you.
Funny what happens when you know your license plate's being watched.
Supervisor Bertram?
Thank you. I know, I always hate saying that I'm the new guy on the block, because I'm really kind of not a new guy on the block, but I am to this particular thing. The parks that we're trying to sell, or are selling, or whatever, are we putting any restrictions on those? I mean, people can just buy them and start doing subdivisions, or how is that working? How does that work?
The answer to that is complicated. The two that we've sold, that we've gotten sold so far, one was sold to a land trust, which protects it, and we sold it directly to that land trust. And that was, a decision made by this board, versus it was zoned that it could potentially be, that was next to Ackerman's Grove County Park. The Aaron property, was the zoning districts, it was partially conservancy and wetlands. So the town of Aaron's zoning essentially put the restrictions on the property in terms of what they were allowed, and they are building a residence on a small portion, or that's my understanding, is that it's residential in zoning. So there are a few restrictions that we're talking about on some of the upcoming properties, because they have, the Marks property has a lot of wetlands. We're also talking about honoring the donors. So there's some conversations we're having there. Gaydon already has a scenic easement on it, which basically makes it an unbuildable piece of property. So it already has restrictions on it. So a lot of the properties that we are, each one has sort of its own unique circumstances.
Okay, that's kind of what I was hoping for. I mean, it's one of those things, you have a park and then all of a sudden you've got 50 neighbors next to you, that type of thing. But I just wanted to make sure that if we would happen to do that, obviously the price would increase if it was something that was available to somebody to subdivide and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure. But I guess I'm happier if it, I mean, it's hard to say because you want to get rid of them, and that's kind of harsh to say rid, but I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is trying to back off a little bit on how many parks we have. And I'd hate to see it where, like I say, there's 50 houses all of a sudden where there used to be a park. So it looks like it's working out. Maybe not the best, but at least it's working out where they're kind of conserved. So, thank you.
Supervisor Jenkins.
Again, I'll compliment you on the work that you've done. I just wanted to point out for all of us, and I know it's before my time, but the reason that we're talking about this is because it's based on priorities. When we prioritize at the city, we always talk about public safety, infrastructure, and quality of life. And the reason we do that is because we know that you can't enjoy those quality of life things if you don't feel safe and you don't have a way to get there. So I just want us to keep that in our minds as we're projecting and thinking of more ways to be creative with our park system, that the reason that we're here, we're having those discussions is because we have set those priorities. And we know that even though we love our park system, there's a reason that we're finding those new and intuitive ways to fund it. So, thanks.
Any other questions? Thanks, Jamie. Like a show of hands for supervisors that will not be at next month's meeting. Anybody not going to be? One? Two? Huh? Next month's meeting, September County Board meeting. Who's not going to be here? One, huh? Probably not. And you'll be gone? Okay. I've been kind of informed by the clerk of courts. If you have vacations coming up, if you know you're going to be missing any meetings, committee meetings or county board meeting, please let them know as soon as possible. It makes a big difference how the agenda is set up, especially when we have things that need to really be discussed and debated with the whole board, or as many as we can. Oh, I'm sorry, county clerk. So, yeah, contact the county clerk. You can notify me, but make sure you copy them if it's an email or something, because they're really the ones that do the scheduling, and when we go through and put our agendas together, we really need to do that, because especially committee meetings, we, you know, if there's going to be absences, there may be problems with quorum, and they need to know. So it'd be much appreciated. With that being said, since we have two missing this month, and we have a brand-new supervisor who hasn't had a chance to really digest all the things, I would entertain a motion to postpone resolution number 32 to the September meeting. Supervisor Bossert, second by Supervisor Brandt. Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious as to how the chair believes that there's going to be a demonstrable difference in the discussion. If we need the money and we can make the argument as for the roads, why wouldn't we do it now, and why would we wait for September, seeing that there are going to be different people that are missing here? Again, we have some of the information here. Obviously, we do have a new member, but I'm assuming that Josh and his staff and all of the transportation folks have done their due diligence, and I'm just looking for the reason.
It is, because it is a 3/4 vote. The threshold is 3/4 of the body.
Understood.
I think it's germane to have everyone present that's possible. If we're looking at.
How many are we missing this meeting?
We're missing two, and we have Supervisor Blanchard, who was just seated about an hour ago. Carol Mary and Smaychuk, Supervisor Smaychuk are missing.
Yeah, what about next
Well,
month?
it seems to be a push. I just wanted to know because
So if you read my committee report, at the time that the committee report went out, we thought it was gonna be 5, including the new seat. It's now 2, so I think that provides clarification. If you read the committee report at the very end, I sought a motion to postpone. Obviously, things have changed. People are here who thought they weren't gonna be here.
Oh, okay.
So at this time, it's the discretion of the board, whatever you wanna do.
Well, we already, I'm seeing it, we already have a motion and a second. I'm going to vote against it because I think that if we're gonna have the same amount here and there, I would hope our new person here is, you know, if we need $10 million for roads, that's probably, if there is.
I'll
one-
give you a little bit more information than that.
Yeah, understood. Well, it's just, it's the biggest, at least what I see from, in spending the time in Madison and reading all the things I'm reading, it's probably one of the biggest criticisms, if you will, of the state is the fact that we have transportation issues and funding issues as regards to that. And obviously, we don't have $10 million to write a check. It is not uncommon for the long term of what you're doing with these type of roads to borrow the money for roads. I mean, virtually every municipality does it. We are in a good situation. I'm not looking to put us in debt, but this is a regular practice of what you do when you build and maintain infrastructure. So I don't see why it's, I mean, I'm going to support the $10 million borrowing for the roads. I don't see why we should have to delay the vote. Because this is on the vote, I'm going to vote against delaying the vote. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing we have a second, or a motion and a second, we'll vote electronically. And a yes vote would be to postpone to September. A no vote would be to hear it now. It's seven, the motion fails 17-7, so, wait. No.
It failed, we're bringing it up.
Yeah, we're bringing it up, that's correct, okay. Okay. Administrator Schulman? You have the floor.
introduce it then?
Oh, we need a motion and a second to bring it. John makes a motion and, or Supervisor Bullowa, and second by Supervisor Mahalik. And we can have discussion on it.
Okay, so just, I want to explain the sheet that I just handed out. This question came up from Supervisor Bossert about the alternative option, if you will. And I'll just walk you through the sheet, and Margie's the one who put all these numbers together, so if you have specific detailed questions about the numbers, she's the person to ask. Basically, the question from Supervisor Bossert, if I get this wrong, please correct me, was what about the alternative of taking the dollars we would spend on principal and interest payments and instead using those on a pay-as-you-go basis? So in other words, what we're talking about with regard to this proposal is approximately a $1.735 million principal and interest payment on an annual basis from now until 2034. What if we took those dollars annually and simply put them on a cash basis towards the same road projects? And so this analysis takes a look at what that would look like. It works off of the same assumptions that we used from the 2050 Transportation Sustainability Plan in terms of what other types of maintenance will have to happen in the meantime. Obviously, what will happen is instead of doing all four of these road projects, reconstruction projects in the next 5 years, you would be essentially pushing them out over the course of the next 16 years. So there are going to be costs to doing that. And if you look on the bottom left, that's a kind of a breakdown of the types of costs we expect. The 2.5% is what we expect, generally speaking, to increase cost year over year. Pavement, labor, oil, all of those things. The CF is crack filling. If we were to do crack filling, how much would that cost? In each of those years, again, there's a growth in cost each year. Seal coating as well, and reconstruction costs. So those are all broken down in such a way as we're trying to amortize or see the appreciation costs of the same. So if basically, to break this down, at the 120,000 foot level, if you look at the items that are grayed out, which of course is highlighted, but we don't print in color here, total county cost on the left, assuming no call, in other words, we're borrowing the money, but we don't pay it off early like we could. And we put that in here because you likely won't be on the board when those calls come. That amount that we would spend would be $28,917,000, okay? So that's assuming that we don't call the debt, we don't pay it off early. If we do call early, the total cost goes down. Obviously, we're saving the interest to $28,144,000. The cost then on the right in the gray is if we delay and we do a pay-as-you-go. So basically what this does, if you look at the years, is instead of being able to do County Highway K in 2019, we would have to push it off to 2021, and so on and so forth for the rest of the projects. What that would result in with those appreciated costs is approximately $29,810,000 cost. So obviously the difference of those you can take a look at yourself, roughly somewhere in that $1 million range, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, but it does cost a bit more. Of course, the true cost is the opportunity cost. We've seen what other levels of government do when you put money to the side for a specific purpose. It's still general fund money. Any board at any time can pull it. They can decide that roads aren't a priority anymore. We're gonna push it over to parks because the economy's bad, and then this whole thing is shot. So there's a lot of assumptions built into this sheet, but to try to compare as best we could apples to apples, or apples to oranges in this case, it looks like it would be about $1 million difference.
Supervisor Connery.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'd like also an overview of the last 10, 15 years on how, in the capital improvement plan, how we handled the road situation at those times. So everybody knows, because not everybody's been here long enough.
Sure. So it's a really pretty quick answer, and Scott can help me out if I go astray here. The gist of it is basically we took $3 million from sales tax, and we've applied that directly to reconstruction and resurfacing projects. And that's what we're talking about here, just so you understand. We're not talking about any normal maintenance, crack filling, crack sealing, that patching, small patching. Those types of projects are separate. They're handled actually through an entirely separate fund. Specifically, this is about reconstruction projects. And we take them as they come, but as you can see, these projects are big bites. So in other words, if you were to try to do those bites in one fall swoop, like we're talking about today, County Highway K in 2019, we can't raise $4 million that quickly to be able to do it in 1 year as of right now. It's a cash flow issue is the problem. So either you've got to pay as you go and push the projects out, or you need to borrow the money in one lump sum. But as of today, it's about $3 million. I can't speak to 10 years, but I know for the last 6 or 7 for sure, we've been putting $3 million of sales tax directly to this type of project each and every year.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
with hearing that, okay, the $3 million that we're putting approximately in there each and every year, that's gonna be over and above the 10 million? In other words, that's how you're gonna be paying this back off?
So no, that is not.
Okay.
Thank you for asking that question. So we will continue to spend. Now we amended this in 2017, or it could have been 16. That $3 million we put an escalator on, and if you read I know everybody's read it front to back, the Transportation 2050 plan, that escalator adjusts throughout the next 30 plus years. But for right now, the escalator is 2%, 3%. It's 3% per year. We're growing that $3 million. So as sales tax grows, a larger portion of sales tax is moved over. So I think this year it's like 3.187 million. Next year is maybe close to 3.3 million. So that will continue to go to resurfacing projects primarily throughout the county. That'll continue to get spent. This will be an additional 1.735 million on top of that 3.187 that we'll spend just for the purpose of paying the debt down. So it's just for the purpose of these 4 roads, or approximately, looks like about 12 miles, or 13 miles of road. These dollars will come from existing general fund monies. So we'll use the existing general fund. The proposal that we have for you tonight would use existing general fund monies. It would prioritize them, send them specifically to debt payments, and then, and that would be the case until such time as it's either callable, and it's called, or the end of the debt, which is 2034.
Okay, there's one other question here, and seeing this on your sheet, Highway K, the board already voted to do the 5 million some odd dollars, whatever it was, to reconstruct that road. Is that part of this $10,000 borrowing? Because I've had questions of people, or 10 million.
Yes,
not
it
1,000.
is. That,
Okay.
so from K, from State Highway, what is currently State Highway 83, east to 41, would be part of this project.
Okay,
Yes.
so that 5 million that we already said yes to is part of this 10 million that we're asking to be said yes to now. So
Yes.
it's actually only a 5 million of new money.
Correct.
Okay.
And the reason we're bringing it to you now and asking to borrow immediately is because we don't have the cash flow to do that County Highway K project even, unless and until you authorize this, or this other proposal, or some other means. So this was all spelled out in the capital improvement plan for those of you who are here, and sitting on this side of the rail. For the first part of that meeting in April, you voted to approve the concept of the borrowing, which included this project, and several of these projects actually. So yes, but it wasn't like we always tell you, the capital improvement plan is a plan. This is you putting that plan into action, one way, shape, or form.
Supervisor Bossert.
Okay, want to start out by confirming something I saw in the packet and just get it confirmed on the record. We have the option with borrowing money to increase the tax levy, but we are choosing not to do so. Is that correct?
So the recommendation that we're bringing forward to you is that we do not increase the tax levy via this borrowing. So the principal and interest payments will be paid with existing tax levy dollars. You have the option, if you chose to do that, that you could add new levy. So that would, of course, increase the tax rate and have other implications, but you could choose to do that.
Okay, but I'm
That's what
just
you wanted
making
to
sure
do.
that the plan
The current
is-
proposal is to not
to
do
raise
that,
the
it's
levy.
use
Yep.
existing levy.
And then where are we finding that savings from?
A lot of places.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of places that, I couldn't give you one specific
Okay,
item.
all right, yep. And, you know, overall, I want to thank you for putting together the numbers on what it would cost for a pay-as-you-go. I think it's important to compare that to borrowing. Borrowing has its place, it has to be responsible. I think in this case, it looks like it is, because we're gonna be fixing our roads sooner and saving the taxpayers' money. And in my mind, that's a win. But we don't know that for sure till we do that analysis. So thank you for doing that. I think Margie, you did a lot of work on that. Thank you.
Supervisor Kelly.
Building off of, thank you, Chairman. Building off of what Chris was trying to get at, and I understand what he was trying to do. But looking at the numbers and kind of just feeling it out, the inflation rate that you used is, starts off at about 2.5%, moving up to about 2.86%. I'm not a banker, but those seem like really realistic, if not conservative, you know, to what might be occurring in the next few years with our booming economy and the cost and wages going up in the labor market. And being that I do have a little bit of a background in construction, I can tell you the price of aggregate and all the rest of that will skyrocket in the next 3 to 5 years. I guarantee you that. So I think actually, this is probably relatively conservative, and I know that's generally the way you do things. It could be a lot worse. So if anybody's entertaining the idea of stretching this out or moving it, keep in mind that the inflation rate, the cost of aggregate, as well as the degradation of the substructures of the roads will cost you even more money as well. So when you combine all these options, you look at really, we're looking at cheap money right now, which won't be cheap in the next probably year. The interest rates will continue to climb. So I think it would be prudent for us to support this right now, take the borrowing, and really save ourselves a lot of money in the long run. And we will honor the 2050 plan that we approved, and we said that we wanted to do this. This will put us on that path forward to getting that done. Thank you.
And it's worth mentioning that we'll be one of the only local governments in the state that has a plan that just fixes it. I mean, which is very impressive. So no matter what funding mechanism you do, I mean, it says something about the leadership of the board.
Supervisor Merton.
Yeah, I've looked at several of these things, and I've got several questions as well. How much money is in our reserve fund right now? How many millions?
I think in the report it was 21 million.
Unallocated was like 15.
Yeah, our general fund unassigned fund balance at the end of 17, which was just in your audit reports, is about 16 million.
Okay.
Which is the top end of our fund balance policy.
What's the low end?
12.
0.
12?
12 million.
Okay. I guess I'm looking at all of that, and I'm looking at the costs that we have, that we're paying for interest. We're paying about 500,000 in interest? Is that correct or wrong? 4.5?
4.5 million.
4.5 million in interest?
And you save approximately, roughly 800,000.
How much?
773,000 you save if the county boards at that time call the notes early. They pay the debt off early.
What would you save?
773,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. I guess I'm frustrated by the fact that I don't like to borrow any more than we have to. We've been a pay-as-you-go for many years. We put 3 million aside each year through the capital improvement plan, is that correct?
Yes.
And if we took maybe a million, we would already be at the 400 million. I'm sorry, I've got hundreds in my brain. At the 4 million for the Highway K project. Is that true or not?
The problem is you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. So you're gonna take,
Well-
if you take $1 million from the 3 million that we spend on the roads now, you're gonna stop another project somewhere so that you can do the K project.
So the 3 million that we're paying now will not cover any of the anticipated additional road projects?
That is correct. Not the projects that you're looking at on your sheet or that you're considering borrowing for. And that's what I was trying to get at earlier. If we approve the borrowing or if we approve the proposal that Supervisor Bossert alluded to, pay-as-you-go, instead of 3 million a year, you're gonna be spending 4.735 million plus for the next several years. Either on debt or on say pay-as-you-go policy.
Wouldn't it be wise to use some of our reserve dollars because it's a one-time expenditure on some of these projects?
So you'll notice that the first borrowing that we're proposing, and I should have clarified, the sheets that you have in front of you actually show the borrowing, not just the one that we're proposing for this year, but also the one that we would be proposing in 2023. And the reason we did that was because we wanted to ladder the borrowing so that our payments stay the same. Because our budgets are fixed, we can't afford to have huge fluctuations in debt payments. And so we wanted to show you what is in the current capital improvement plan, so that once we're implemented, if you choose to approve this, we'll have sufficient cash flow from the general fund of 1.73 million from 2018 through 2023. In other words, we'll be able to borrow the full, at that point, 22 million in order to get the project done. So what I'm saying to you is the total project cost that we need in 2019 is actually 11 million. So we already plan to move $1 million over in order to complete all the projects we have on our list. We just wanted to make sure you had the entire picture.
Supervisor Bertram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh, I'm not trying to be mean to you, but I think your numbers are off. It's gonna be much more than what you said. I mean, everything is going up. It's ridiculous.
you mean this sheet?
Right. I mean, you gotta buy right away, if my understanding is correct, normally when you do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so all of those things are calculated in, just roughly speaking, based on what we've done in the past. But there's no doubt that this is,
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, you're really conservative because, I mean, I think most people know I'm a chairman for the town of Barton, and what it costs us to do little pieces of road, I mean, and again, as one of the supervisors said, everything's going up. I mean, I've been told by many people, I didn't even get a quote for doing roads this year from Payne and Dolan because the Foxconn thing. I mean, it's ridiculous how much is being transferred to other locations. I mean, I hate hearing Foxconn, even though I think it's a great idea, because it's sucking the life out of everything. Concrete, I can't get concrete work done because concrete's going north, or south, I mean. So, I mean, I appreciate what you did. I'm wholeheartedly appreciate it, but I think if any of us are sitting here and saying that these numbers are right, I mean, again, I'm not trying to beat you up, but it's gonna get ugly the longer you wait. It's not gonna get any better. I mean, property values are going up. Obviously, everybody wants more for right away. They want more money for this and that. So, I mean, I would definitely support the borrowing. Thank you.
Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One other aspect that hasn't really been touched on here is if we do a pay-go, what happens? There's something like K, which costs a lot of money. Now, instead of inconveniencing people for a fairly short amount of time, you're going to do it piece by piece by piece by piece. What do you think is going to happen? So to all of my dear friends in the town of Hartford, I think that they would very much enjoy having the borrowing there so they can minimize the pain of road construction, which would be set up in these county roads for over a decade, versus condensing it and minimizing that pain and minimizing that inconvenience, not only to residents there, but also to businesses along those stretches. That's an important consideration when you're looking at something like this. So please keep that in mind, and again, I'd encourage you to vote yes. Thank you.
Supervisor Bishop.
I personally believe that reconstructing roads properly is always a good investment. I have a quick question of clarification on the Highway W. Where do those miles end? At 175?
correct. So State Highway 33 to State Highway 175.
Thank you.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is the length of the term for the borrowing? You said 2034, I believe,
Yeah,
is the
so
end date.
they would both be 10-year notes, and if you look, I'm not sure what page it is on yours, but it had multiple scenarios. I think this one says scenario 3A, if I remember, or 2A? 2A. And it has a Baird logo in the top right corner. What's happening is they're two 10-year notes, but they're overlapping one another. So this current note that we're asking for is a 10-year note that would end in 2028. The last principal and interest payments would be in that year, levied in obviously 2027. But then it would be overlapped by a 10-year note that would be asking for in 2023, which would end in 2033.
Okay, that makes sense. And then, obviously, we don't know the rates until we lock them in, but they would be a fixed rate, not a adjustable rate
Correct.
loan.
Fixed rate, yes.
Callable.
Callable rate, yes.
Callable too, yep. For the first note of 10 years, or for 10 million, do we take that full 10 million right all at once, or is that set up where we can take it in pieces?
So we'll draw the full 10 million, and I'll ask Margie to correct me if I go astray here, but we'll take the full 10 million in a draw. Obviously, we can't spend, we don't have the resources, human resources, to spend 10 million in one shot. So we'll begin the County Highway K project, which is about half of that, and then in a short period of time, some of the other projects will come behind it, which is what leads you to, in just a couple more years, borrowing the next round for the next two major projects.
So we'll have the 10 million right off the get-go, and some
Correct.
of it's just gonna sit.
Right,
sit
so
in
there
our
will be
checking
some
account.
sitting, we will collect some interest on that, obviously, it'll sit in a bank account. That interest we can collect based on the rules of borrowing. We'll be able to collect that for up to 2 years, and after that, we start to get into some issues with the legalities of it. Is that a fair way to put it?
Okay.
The IRS will wanna talk to us.
The Highway W part, you said that's from 175 to 33.
Correct.
So it'd be clear that that borrowing is not for the new possible Highway W project?
Correct, that is correct. The extension that was proposed as part of the jurisdictional transfer is a completely separate piece, unrelated to this.
So if there's borrowing that would be needed for that, that would be a separate discussion?
Separate
that
discussion,
would be
separate
coming
vote.
forward.
Correct.
Thank you.
I got a couple questions.
Okay. Is Jermaine, okay, go ahead.
What do you mean, Jermaine? I'm asking questions about borrowing the money.
Okay, good.
The 1.7 million for the repayment is coming out of general fund money. Are we gonna be reducing the general fund then every year by that 1.75, or are we actually gonna be offsetting that spending in other areas are we gonna maintain the general fund balance, or are we gonna be trying to reduce it with
So
this?
the tax levy when I say the 1.75, I mean, will come from general fund, I mean it'll come from the existing tax levy that we already collect. We won't be asking for more levy in order to pay for the debt payments. So, and I say that because the alternative is, the county board, that's our recommendation. The county board could say, no, we don't want you to do that, we want you to increase the levy by 1.735, so we have the same amount of levy we've always had to continue to spend on operations. We could do that, that's an option.
Yeah, I guess I was we're not doing deficit spending essentially, is what I was asking. Okay.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No, that's fine. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. Supervisor Galitz?
Thank you. Based on all the comments about projected and realized increase in costs, is there any way we can take advantage of economies of scale with other counties and or municipalities that are doing road construction?
Yeah, so this has been a question on multiple fronts, maybe not necessarily for us, but particularly on the local government side. Them not being able to get good quantity prices. I know Scott has had conversations on multiple occasions with local governments, and this is one of the things that we'd really like to be more proactive on. Now, whether we can really leverage down the cost because we're gonna do an extra 3 or 4 miles for ourselves, I don't know if I could say that necessarily, but partnering with other municipalities, we may be able to save them money. I'm sure the towns, for example, when they do a half-mile road, are paying through the nose compared to what the county pays when we're doing 7 or 8 miles. So, does that answer the question you're asking?
It does. And then the other question is potential early pay down. Have we considered putting additional money aside each year that paid it down sooner than
Yes, so initially when I talked to the board about this and executive committee about it, I was much more explicit about my intention to want to do that. We get into some arbitrage issues if we begin to save for that purpose, and specifically we get into some issues with being able to get good rates, because if they know you're gonna pay off early, they're less likely to buy the bonds from you. You know, they're trying to make money, obviously. So I would say my experience in Washington County, and I'm sure people who have been here longer than me could speak to this in more detail. My experience is we always do that. My intention is to continue to do that, but for that reason, I don't want to commit to doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Carr?
Yeah, thanks for showing us the details on these, Josh. I appreciate the detail. I'm in favor of of borrowing the money. I think what you've shown us here and what a number of the other supervisors have commented on as far as increased costs. I think your forecast on increased costs are probably conservative as well, based upon what I've been hearing from different construction people and being a town supervisor for the town of West Bend. So I am in favor of borrowing. The second thing I'm kind of curious about is we have made it, in the presence of you, have made it very clear, because you're the front man and you're the guy who's been running around all over telling everybody who's interested that the county's going broke. And one of the main excuses is the levy limit situation. So here now all of a sudden we're going to borrow $20 million, and we're not going to take the option that we have under the state to raise taxes modestly to pay off the debt. We're according to your plans, we're not going to raise taxes to pay this off, even though we have the legal ability to do that, which runs counter to the logic of what I believe you've been running around telling everybody, that you know, we can't survive out into the next 15 years, and we have to cut all these support for all these different organizations that we've traditionally supported because of the levy limit. So to me, it's pretty bad PR. And it seems to me that the logical thing to do in this case, if we're going to borrow the money, which I fully support, to fix the roads, is to go ahead and raise the taxes modestly, because this is going to result in a very, very small tax increase for each individual home in the county, or each individual taxpayer in the county. And so I'm in favor of not paying this out of ongoing levies, but in fact raising the limit as we're allowed to do legally to pay off this debt.
And certainly that's an option. It's one of the things we could do. I think I've been here long enough to know the political realities of making a proposal like that. If I was going to do that, I probably wouldn't have brought it at all. However, it is an option. You certainly can do that. You do have the legal authority to do it. You have the ability to do it. If that's something that the board wants to do, I would recommend somebody make a motion to amend and make the motion to do it that way. There's nothing wrong with us doing it that way. You have both options.
I'm going to skip you, Joe. Pete hasn't spoke yet. Supervisor Sorcy?
I thought my button didn't work, thank you. Appreciate that. What is this guy smoking? All right, thank you. As much as I do hate spending money, and Mr. McEwen will attest to this, when I first got on the board, I hear it in church, I hear it all over the place. Fix the roads, fix the roads. I don't care if you raise my, fix the roads. We owe it to people to fix the roads. As much as I don't want, I agree with what Frank was saying, but we gotta deliver on this one. People they want it done. So that's my 2 cents that I've been waiting for, but as much as I don't like getting in debt, we really need to deliver on this. Thank you.
Thanks. Supervisor Godric?
Thank you. As much as I want to see the roads all in perfect condition, it'll never happen. We've been trying to keep our roads in good conditions for the last 20 years, 30 years. the way the boards, the old highway department board used to do it, was when they knew Highway W needed to be reconstructed, they knew that 5 years in advance. They started to put excess or monies on the side. Within a 3-year period, they started doing that. Whatever happened to that, we're not doing that anymore.
It's right here. You can keep doing it if you want to.
You know, I mean, that's one way of doing it. We as a board for many years, and Mark was a big pusher on this, I know, and I was too, get rid of the debt. We got our debt down to what, 3 million
8 million.
or 8 million?
Just under 9.
Okay, what was it at 8 years ago? Quite a bit more. Okay, now we're gonna go back up probably over and above what we were even at one time. The other question I really have on here, or comment I would really have, we're taking that $10 million right up front. Okay, in the year 2019. We're not gonna use that money up until when? 2023?
No, we probably will use that 10 million by 2021.
Okay, so for 2 years. So in the first year, we're not gonna use it, we're gonna have it in a bank account earning what kind of interest rate versus what are you paying for interest rate?
Yeah.
Isn't there a loan out there that you can take and say, I want $10 million, but I want a checkbook so I can write checks? And then start paying interest?
Well, I don't know about that specifically. I
Yeah.
suppose you could have a line of credit.
Line of
thank you.
credit, yes.
Yes, I suppose.
So I
you could
mean,
do that.
there's different avenues a person
With
can
an
go to.
adjustable, with an adjustable rate, interest rate,
Yeah, it's possible.
yeah. Those
It's possible.
Those may go up.
But, you know, usually underneath, borrowing for public entities like ours, that rate is a lot less than what it's gonna be for anybody else out there. Is it gonna be that $772,000 that you said we're gonna, you know, have there on it? I don't know. I too, and that would be in favor of raising the levy in order to help pay this back, because otherwise, what we've been saving in taxes, in sales tax and putting in towards roads, are gonna be used to pay this note off. Okay? It's not gonna be used to fix roads, because these prices that we're projecting out here, I don't think, like Mr. Bertram, I don't think there is anywhere is gonna be close. Because everybody's talking asphalt price is gonna go way the heck up next year and the year after. I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball. But I think if we would raise that levy limit because of it, or at least for part of it, it sure would make it fiscally responsible, more responsible to our people. This way here, we're just pushing it off to a later date. I'm not a
With
good
the
one for
borrowing?
that.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what you're doing. You're borrowing money today to do something in a year
It's
or
a-
two.
But I don't mean to argue with you, but to just provide some additional information. That 10 million, yes, it sits in a bank, but there's expenditures, and Supervisor Bertram was pointing some of those out, that will be happening throughout that entire time, that we'll have to be drawing on it from 2019. Frankly, the moment we get that money, we'll start spending that money down. If we approve this, you have to actually vote one more time to approve what's borrowed or who we borrowed it through. But when that happens, we'll start paying folks for easements and right-of-way and all kinds of things. And that'll happen continuously all the way until that 10 million is spent down. So it's not like we need 2 million now and 2 million later and 2 million after that. That's the problem. And yes, a line of credit would certainly work. It's a way to do it, but I can't imagine,
I don't know if they do. Yeah,
we could do it theoretically.
but I would be very much for, though, having the levy go up slightly or whatever it needs to do in order to pay this back, that we don't sit ourselves behind the 8 ball here, you know, by whatever we're not gonna be utilizing of our sales tax monies for roads.
So I asked Margie while we were talking to come up with that number, the impact, if we decided to not use existing property tax levy, and instead increase the levy and therefore the rate?
It'd be, based on 2018. Based on the 2018 tax rate, because we have not yet calculated 19's proposed, it would have been a 12-cent increase, which would have brought us in line with right under 2015 or 16's tax rate.
That's 12 cents per thousand.
12 cents per
Per
thousand,
thousand.
instead of a 9-cent per thousand drop?
Yes.
So really,
It's
is
a
it really
21
21 cent increase?
21 cent difference.
You know what I'm asking? It dropped 9 cents last year.
Yes. I will,
So-
between,
Like,
the 12 cents would be on top of the 9 cents decrease. So if we would have not taken the decrease, it actually would have been a net between the two.
Oh, okay.
So,
So it's 9 and 3 to get to 12. Okay.
Supervisor Bossert?
Okay, got a couple of things. I had a couple supervisors mention the pay-as-you-go. I want to be very clear that the reason I wanted that looked at is I want to be responsible in borrowing. We can't look at whether or not borrowing is responsible if we don't closely look at the alternative. Now that we've seen the alternative, we see that we're going to save $1 million and fix our roads sooner by borrowing. So in my mind, borrowing here is the fiscally responsible thing to do. So I'm going to be voting in favor of borrowing. We've had some talks about the levy. I generally would lean against raising the levy. Back in March, for no particular reason, I was out meeting with a lot of my neighbors. And one of my neighbors moved here from a very similar community in Indiana, about maybe 8, 10, 12 years ago, whatever the number is. And as fiscally responsible as we are in Washington County, his property taxes are still at least double what they were in this very similar community in Indiana that provided all the same services. So that tells me that even as good as we're doing, there's room for us to do a lot better. So that's why I would, and this is going off gut, but I lean against raising the levy. Now, a question I have, and this would be a question for maybe Josh or Brad. Do we have to look at the issue of raising the levy or not raising the levy today? Or can we vote on the borrowing today and look at the issue of raising the levy at a later date?
Theoretically, you could push it off to a later date, because that won't be approved until the budget's approved. However, practically speaking, we need to know today, because we're in the middle.
It's gonna affect how you budget.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're gonna see Department of Budgets in the next 3 weeks at your committee meetings, and as soon as that's done, we're starting to take those pieces and put the budget together.
Okay, so I guess at this point then, I put it on the other supervisors. If somebody thinks we need to be raising the levy, make that motion, let's talk about it, let's vote on it. Otherwise, let's vote on borrowing without raising the levy and move forward with the rest of our agenda. Thank you.
Supervisor Krebs, I'm gonna go to Supervisor Schleife. He hasn't spoken on that. Maybe next. Supervisor Schleife?
Thank you, sir. I too am in favor of the borrowing. I think we need to do it. And just to throw another curve in, seeing we're thinking outside the box, can we just borrow now and leave the levy the way it is, and possibly when we go for the next 12 million, then look really hard at raising the levy? Or does that all have to go together? Sorry.
Yeah, that's a good question. No, you can't. You can only, so the comment was you can always raise the levy. You can't. You're capped. When you borrow the money, does it matter what we do initially, or can we go back later and say, oh, just kidding, we want to raise
I believe when we issue the second debt, we would have the option of changing our levy at that time. Our debt service levels wouldn't change in the scenarios as they've been structured. However, at any point in time, we could say that we are adding debt, new debt levy,
Yeah.
not necessarily new debt. But I'd really have to look at the levy limits to.
It'd
to
almost
see
be a
for sure.
question for the Department of Revenue, I think.
Yeah.
On their interpretation. The moment that here's the other trick, and to circle back, I guess, to Supervisor Carr's concern, the problem with us borrowing and putting it on the levy, rather than borrowing in the fund, is that once that borrowing's done, it mandatory statutorily has to come off. So it's gonna impact your levy in the long haul, in one way, shape, or form. So how we fill that form, which is why we need to know tonight, how we fill that form out, our tax levy worksheet, dictates what happens 15 years from now. So it's an important point for you to debate whether you want to pull new levy, use existing levy, put it on, be able to drop it off at the end. So for example, in 2019, we have $300,000 in debt payments that is coming off. It's gonna actually help to pay for this as well. However, if we weren't taking out new debt, we wouldn't be able to shift that money over. That's how the state law works. So they've got you coming and they've got you going, which is the frustration, which equals the presentations, which, yeah, we could borrow our way out of it if we so chose. But that's the real reason we need to know tonight. And there's no wrong answer. However you decide you want to do it, it's fine.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you. First, you said how it affects our tax levy will affect us in 15 years. It's going to affect us in 10 years, though, correct?
It'll affect us in 15 years because we laddered the payments.
But we're only voting on 10 million tonight. You're talking about an additional borrowing of 12 million separately,
You're
though.
correct, you are correct.
And-
I'm assuming that you would then borrow the second, you're right.
Okay, just making sure those are two separate votes.
They are, but the way that we structured it, I'm making that assumption.
I would say for anyone that how we vote tonight doesn't necessarily force our vote for the next
That's a fair
borrowing.
comment, correct.
The 12% increase per thousand, was that based off of 10 million then? Or was that based?
12%. You just gave me a stroke.
I'm sorry, 12 cents per thousand. Is that based off of 10 million borrowing or 22 million of borrowing? then?
It's based off of the payment. It's not based off of how much we borrow, it's based off of how much we pay. I know government math.
But paying is dictated by what you're borrowing.
Correct, which is why we showed you the whole
So,
picture.
so the 12 cents is for paying on 22 million. Is that
Correct.
phrased properly?
Correct, that is phrased properly,
Based on a $1.7 million debt payment.
which in essence
Yep,
is.
I follow the fuzzy math. In my comment towards whether we've changed the levy now or in the future or if ever, I guess my brain equates it to the net new construction. I think we have like a 3-year window where we can kind of look back and grab that. That's my question, if we would be able to do something like that towards the debt service.
And that is really a question I don't think we could answer with certainty unless we talk to the Department of Revenue. I wouldn't be comfortable telling you, oh yeah, 2 years from now we can do it.
Assume not.
I would assume not, if I were in your chair.
Okay. Lastly, and this was in the 2050 plan, but I don't have it in front of me. What is the lifespan of a new construction project? Not a complete rebuild like this.
25 until resurfacing, 50 until reconstruction. Is that right?
Okay.
So we reconstruct K, it'll be 25 years from now, that will resurface it, and another 25 years from then, it'll need to be reconstructed again.
Okay, so our 10-year payback leaves us plenty of time to start saving up for the next part. Obviously, there's other maintenance to be done in the middle, in between those.
That's correct.
Those time periods, but.
Yes.
Okay.
And to be clear, the borrowing that we're proposing, both the first and the second, would complete all the projects by 2023, and it's another 17 years until we have another road that needs complete reconstruction.
Wait, can you repeat that again?
So the proposal for both borrowings, again, I'm assuming you're gonna make the second borrow, will pay for all the road projects that you have on this sheet that was in your capital improvement plan. And that's all the reconstructions we have planned from now until 2050. Well, let me rephrase that, that's not quite, I'm not saying that correctly. It provides enough money so that we can sustain with our operational funding through 2050. We don't have to do any more borrowing, we don't have to come up with any more money than the 3 million we talked about
The
before.
rest is pay as you go.
The rest is pay as you, that's the best way to say yes, thank you.
Thank you.
That's important.
Supervisor Merton.
Thank you. I've been thinking about this, and if we go to borrowing, it becomes debt service, and debt service is exempt from the levy limits. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if we go to referendum, and it would be for 10 million, we don't even need that much every year. If you go for a multiple of years, you could go for, well, 2.5 million. And you would not be paying your debt interest costs. Now, the debt interest costs you have on your sheet is 4.5 million. If I look at scenario 2, it shows the 10 million promissory note interest at 1.086. It's a lot, it's almost double. So how do we get a lesser amount on the box up in the upper left versus what scenario 2 said?
I guess I'm not following your question. Did
Well,
you
I'm
get it?
looking at scenario 2, and it says interest. It's got the principal listed from 218 to 233, and it's got the interest, and the total is at the bottom for the 10 million is 1.086 interest. So how can that not be the same interest that's reflected in the upper left-hand corner, where it's 4.5 million?
So we're suggesting it'll be 4.5 million if you add that interest, that you, 1.086, plus the next borrowing, which is 3.493.
That's another interest.
Correct, so you add those two together and you come up with the 4.5, whatever you said it was.
Okay, it's just different.
It's the same question that Supervisor Krebs had about.
I got it, I got it.
first-
It
first
just
borrow,
looks
second borrow.
different. Doesn't look like it's as
So
much.
I can tell you that I have on the back of a napkin done the math on a referendum, and I've done the math on the borrowing in all of these scenarios, and I've done the math here. The cheapest way for the taxpayer to do this would be for you to borrow the money, pay it off early, and set it up so that the tax levy drops off at the end of the borrowing, which in scenario 2A, which is what executive recommended, would be, am I reading that right, 2030? The reason I say it that way, I think this is getting to Supervisor Krebs' question. The amount that we levy is what it is. So the amount that you pay as a taxpayer, you don't really care how it happens, it's just the amount. If you look at it from a taxpayer's perspective, if the 1.735 drops off in 2030, that's the most efficient way for you to pay for this. The alternative of doing a referendum is you basically either have to increase the levy, which is essentially the same math as this math.
But you wouldn't pay the interest.
Right, but the cost of appreciation is going to kill you in the long haul. The appreciating cost of doing the projects is still going to happen. Unless you're going to go to referendum to borrow 20 million in one fell swoop, which is the next fastest way. If we increase the levy one time by 20 million, everybody's gonna see their tax rate go up by approximately 90 cents, and then drop the next year by 21.735 million. Yeah, I know, this is why I didn't bring it up. It's the second fastest way to do it, but you have control over it. The reason I didn't recommend it is, I can't imagine, I didn't believe that the county board would want to increase the tax rate by 33% for 1 year and drop it by that amount the next year. It's just too
No.
much gaming.
Why wouldn't you level it off over the 10 years?
The same reason you wouldn't save 1.75 million every single year to do projects. It's the cost of appreciation that's gonna bite you that way. It's absolutely another scenario. You can do that. Don't get me wrong.
Well, what is the 12 cents increase?
The 12 cents.
What does it bring us in dollars?
1.735588.
Supervisor Carr.
First, an observation. When's the last time you filled your car up with gas? I bet it cost you more than 35 bucks. If you have a $200,000 home, which is probably somewhere near the average home price in this county, you're talking about a 12 cents, a $36 annual increase in taxes. There isn't a person in this county who can't afford to pay another $36 if they have a $200,000 house. It's less than a fish fry. It's less than filling your car up with gas. I mean, it's a nominal amount. So I'm gonna move that we stop talking about this and approve this thing and do it with payment out of the by increasing the tax levy to pay off the debt.
You're making a motion to increase, are you making a motion to?
I'm making a motion, yeah.
I'll second it.
Making a motion to increase the tax levy by,
We can't make a motion to increase the tax levy, we can make a motion to issue the debt and pay for it with the tax levy.
Yes. So there's a motion on the floor, yes?
yes.
That is correct.
So it would be amending the motion to clarify that we would increase the tax levy to make these payments.
And we have a second by Supervisor Brander. So, we can,
What kind of vote, does this need a 2/3 vote, or?
This needs, oh, that's a good question. The
Yeah.
amendment, what does the amendment need, Brad?
Amendment's a majority, and then we vote on the resolution as amended.
okay, so we have a motion, can you read the motion again?
Raise tax.
Isn't it just to increase the tax levy to the debt borrowing?
I think that's, what did you call it?
Motion to amend it to increase the tax levy to pay for the debt borrowing.
Correct.
Okay. All right, does everybody understand the motion? Okay, we're ready to vote?
You can speak to the motion.
You can speak to the motion. Okay, yeah, your light was on.
Oh, I called in, it did beep. When it comes to this motion, I just want to say one thing. As far as increasing the levy, I'm absolutely against it. I'm not going to vote to increase taxes. And it may be what he considers nominal amount, that's fine. So is West Bend's nominal amount, the school system's nominal amount, everybody's nominal amount. I'm tired of my taxes going up, and I'm not going to do it. If there's a time where I feel it's necessary to raise taxes on the people, I'll wait for a time when we really need it. I don't think this is now. We can do this right out of our regular levy, and I think that's prudent for us to do. May come a day when we do need to borrow some money and raise it, and I think that's the time to do it, not now, not for something this small. Thank you.
Supervisor Bossert.
Okay, I'm gonna be a no vote on the amendment as well. My thought is, if we're gonna be raising the tax levy, I'm not gonna be a yes vote until I've talked to a lot of my neighbors, and I'm confident that the majority of them support raising the levy. Based on the conversations I've had with neighbors in January, February, and March of this year, I don't think that's the case, so I'm gonna be a no vote.
Supervisor Merton.
If we borrow money and the debt, it's put on the debt as a levy, your taxes are going to go up anyhow. How are they not? You have to pay it off. Pay off your debt every year. We're not taking that out of our general fund as well.
I have a comment, I'm gonna vote against raising any of the tax levy. The arguments we've heard about the park fees, that people can't afford $30. This is more than that, so I will be a no vote for the amendment.
Then give me a clarification. Are we not going to have an increase in our levy with a debt service added to it?
Correct.
Yeah. So you're
No.
raising them either way.
No, we are, you asked, are we not? Yes, we are not. We are not having a levy increase with the proposal that you have in front of you. The amendment that was just made would have a levy increase.
But how are you going to pay off your $10 million debt?
We will use money that we have now.
Where do we have it?
I said there's a variety of places that we've been, ever since you approved the 5-year financial plan, we've been working towards being able to do this.
We're told every year we're going $1 to $2 million gap. Where are we picking it up?
Yes, some of it comes from our health insurance savings, some of it comes from a variety of other places. I mean, if you.
Park sustainability.
All kinds of things.
And we're growing.
We have
I
a
don't
si-
believe it, and I will support the amendment.
You don't have to believe it, we can give you the numbers.
Supervisor Goddard.
Easy explanation to Marilyn. They're gonna cut services in other areas. They're not gonna be able to do as much as what they planned on doing at one time, or they're gonna come back to the board and say, hey, we need more money for this, or we need more money for that. So I mean, why not put it right in front of everybody that they know what you're doing, rather than making a sideshow here, a sleight of hands? I mean, you're taking it from health insurance, you're taking it from roads getting done, you're taking it from parks, you're.
Is there a question in there?
No.
That's called budgeting.
Did someone else come in? I don't see it on the, okay. Supervisor Jenkins.
I'll just repeat what I said before. That's why we prioritize. Again, it was, what did I say? Public safety, infrastructure, and quality of life. So infrastructure is a higher priority than quality of life things. Leave it at that.
Thank you. Okay, saying discussion has ended. We can vote on this electronically. On the amendment, and a no vote is to not raise the tax levy. A yes vote is to vote for it.
What is the motion?
Could you repeat the motion again?
To amend Resolution 32 to increase the tax levy to cover the debt burden.
So green raises taxes, red keeps them the same.
Red doesn't raise taxes.
That's what I said.
Yeah, okay. All right, we're ready to
Green
vote?
raises taxes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Vote.
18-6, motion fails. The amendment, a motion for the amendment fails. Seeing we've discussed this at great length, we can move on to voting on the resolution.
How many votes do we need?
We need 2/3, we need 18. I'm sorry, 3/4. You need 20 votes? Yeah, 20 votes to pass. Are we ready? Okay. It passes with 20 votes. Moving on to 2018 Resolution 33, amend the 2018 to 2020 capital improvement plan, county highway projects, county trunk M. We hear a motion motion by Supervisor Bassel, I hear a second.
What's the motion?
2018 Resolution 33, amend the 2018-2022 Capital Improvement Plan, County Highway Projects, County Trunk Highway M. And second by Supervisor Bullowa. Open the floor for discussion. Do we have an explanation, or do we hit that pretty much already? I think we're.
Everything's in the report,
Yep.
it's pretty straightforward, I think.
If there's any questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on this electronically. All in favor of aye? Motion passes 23-1. 2018 resolution. What? It's not coming up on the board, sorry. Supervisor Sorcy?
Yeah, I hit the wrong button, can I revoke the thing here?
Pardon?
You see, I hit the wrong button, can I hit this?
Okay, how does it? Okay. The council states the vote stands, that once it's tabulated and put up, if you, according to Robert's rules, if you need to change your vote, you need to do it beforehand, and I apologize, it didn't come up, you didn't come up on the screen, so I had no idea. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you need a break? Ladies and gentlemen, if you, since we're having issues with the board, if you do need to make a motion, such as Supervisor Sorcy, please try to draw my attention. Raise your hand, throw something at me, get my attention. All right, we're gonna take a 7-minute break. All right, moving on. 2018 ordinance 2018 resolution 34, 2019-2021 Washington Parks Fiscal Sustainability Plan. Do I have a motion to entertain? Supervisor Jenkins, Supervisor Bishop. Any discussion on the matter? As I understand, Supervisor Krebs is going to abstain. Okay, we call for the vote on this. Vote electronically. Motion passes 22-1 with 1 abstention. 2018 Ordinance 2, Rules of the County Board, Executive Committee, and Committee Authority. I have a motion. Supervisor McEwen, Supervisor Dice. Any discussion? Supervisor Kelly?
Just, could you give us a quick recap of this? What we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll recall several months back, we changed the fund transfer process so that it would go to committee, the standing committee, and requiring all fund transfers, so not just general fund transfers, but also enterprise fund transfers, et cetera. The problem we created when we did that, the way we wrote the language was, we ended up requiring ourselves to go to 2 committees. So the standing committee had to take the project, the executive committee had to take the fund transfer, and then it would come to you. What this does is it goes back to streamlining your intent when we went to 5 committees was 1 committee, 1 decision, or 1 recommendation to the county board. So this will have all fund transfers go to the project whose committee it is. That project will then make 1 recommendation on both the fund transfer and the project to the county board, and then the county board makes a final decision.
So it'll take the executive committee basically out of that process.
Correct.
As an example, if we're doing something with a road that goes through DPW, or Bullowa's committee, then it would go to Bullowa, they approve it, it comes to the committee directly, without going through executive committee.
Assuming you needed a general fund transfer to do it, yes.
Right. So it's basically declining the executive committee's power a little bit, so to speak.
It skips the executive and goes straight to the board.
Takes them out of the
Takes them out of the picture.
There's a reason why, obviously, again, going back to some things that have been stated about the powers in this board being questioned. I'm just trying to define and show that there is no committee that has ultimate power over this board. So now that that's on film and everybody's seen it, we can go ahead with the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Galitz.
And I don't need to be on film. I just see it as a simple, lean process of eliminating waste and an excessive approval process that doesn't bring any value, so it's a no-brainer.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further comments, we'll vote on this electronically. 2/3 vote is required. All right. Passes unanimously, 24-0. Okay. 2018 Ordinance 3, Washington County Staffing Plan, Administration, and Washington County Classification and Compensation Plan. Turn that over to Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I hoping in the committee report, I've explained where we're coming from and where we're going. A couple of things that I want to bring to your attention first. This and the next position are the next ordinance rather, are tandem ordinances. So they are working in concert with one another. I note in this particular county board report that the employee count in administration will go from 3.5 to 3 employees. I will, after speaking with some of the supervisors, just to be clear, the next ordinance will take up a reclassification of a position in the county clerk's office that has been assisting administration with administrative duties. So if you consider that a half position, basically what's happening is administration is staying at 3.5 and the county clerk is dropping down a half a position. But either way you cut the pie, the county is going down a half a position overall. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear, that you understood that these two really are connected to one another. As we've talked about ad nauseum over the course of the last many years, we have been working diligently on fiscal sustainability. I would say it is the vision, the long-term vision of the county to do so, and as you again approved today, to do so in such a way as maintaining or reducing our tax rate. In order for us to be able to do that, we have, as you've seen again today, had to do things that we've never done before and looking at doing things completely different. This is exactly one of those things. So when I came to the county 4.5 years ago, the position that we are talking about now was an administrative assistant to my position. It's a full-time position. It was split out with the emergency management department to try and help save some costs. Emergency management has now been moved into its own department. That department is a one-person show with some support now coming from Veteran Services. So we've just modified where those dollars go. That particular position and the department reports now to Matt Furno, our deputy administrator. That left, when Judy retired, that left a vacancy. And I came to you at that time and I said, with that vacancy, we're going to eliminate the position on the books, because every time in the past 4.5 years when I've come to you and said, I think this is a position we should have, you've approved it. And so this is exactly what this is today. Instead of having a full-time support staff position dedicated to executive assistant or secretary work, we are working collaboratively with the clerk's office to pick up that work. They're doing it as a team, although primarily Mary Schlitt is picking up a great deal of that work. Beyond that, then the next question became, do we just eliminate that position, the one FTE then, off the books, or do we look at doing something different with it? And that's what I'm proposing to you today. Whether or not you do this won't affect the way that the current operation of the county works. If you choose not to do it, it's fine. We'll be okay. We've been operating this way for the last several months, and I think it's been working. But what we're proposing today is something totally different than most other counties in the state of Wisconsin are doing that have administrative coordinators or county administrators. There are 4 counties in the state. They are county executives counties, Waukesha, Outagamie, Dane, and Milwaukee, that have positions that have similarities to this position, but there are not county administrator counties that do. In other states, Coconino or Coconino County, Arizona, as an example, which is a county manager form of government, they do have a position of this variety. That position reports to the county manager. In a county executive form of government, many times these positions report to the county board. But because we don't have a full-time county board person, we're proposing that this position reports to the county administrator because I work directly for you. A number of the job duties and responsibilities are spelled out in the job description, and you have a copy of the job description in draft form. We're in the process of tweaking and changing that as we go, but generally speaking, the duties that you read there are the duties that you can expect. So what will this job be doing? Basically, it's proposing a position that'll do something that we really haven't gotten into in great depth before. First, it's getting much more active from a legislative front, and I think you can see that in the job description. One of the things that we've talked about and was talked about at great length during the process that we went through with Epic Creative a few weeks ago was that the state of Wisconsin has a few things that we need them to do in order to achieve that vision of fiscal responsibility and fiscal sustainability. Some of those things, obviously, you've passed resolutions on: dark store legislation, assistant district attorney funding, OWI-TAD funding. Those types of things don't happen by themselves. And we've seen in the past that even our resources that we currently use, like the Wisconsin Counties Association, they aren't focused on Washington County specifically. They have 72 counties that they serve. So this position in this particular regard is something that needs to, would be able to help us work on that particularly, and would be able to help specifically you as supervisors when you make your legislative efforts. And I know there's several of you that do that very well. The second thing that the position would be able to do is serve as a liaison, not just between legislators, but with state departments. So when you think Department of Transportation, Department of Natural Resources, on occasion, and more frequently than it has been in the past, I would say, we have issues working directly with the state of Wisconsin's departments, and it's usually at a frontline level. This position we would have an expectation would be able to communicate directly with the Secretary's office and the Secretary's staff to cure any issues that we have. One of those issues, just as an example, is the Wisconsin DOT deer pickup process. For those of you who've been involved with the Highway Department or Public Works Department, this has turned into basically a fiasco. And right now it's essentially a bureaucratic mess. The legislature didn't help the process when they made the change that they made, but now we're stuck in bureaucracy. And this is the type of a position that would have time to be able to work with the state bureaucracy to solve that problem. And I can provide other examples if you're interested. The next couple of pieces are probably the biggest pieces that I see this position being able to do. And that is achieving not only your vision of fiscal sustainability, but also really mission-driven shared services, collaboration, and consolidation. Developing relationships with municipalities. We heard one of the supervisors today mention the possibility of leveraging our economies of scale with municipalities and lowering the cost of asphalt. Those things don't happen by themselves. There needs to be administrative heavy lifting that happens, and this is the type of position that could make one small example like that happen. We have lots of other opportunities for shared services and collaborations. If you do real quick back of the napkin math, in the 4.5 years I've been here, you can add up over the course of the next 25 years, the county's probably going to save somewhere between $5 and $7.5 million from the shared services opportunities we've done. More of that is possible, but it doesn't happen by itself. and we can create more opportunities by having someone dedicated to it. Lastly, is fostering citizen engagement. And one of the things that, again, we've heard tonight, and we've heard many times in the past, is that there's differing viewpoints on what exactly the citizens want to hear. One of the strategic priorities that I was given from you as part of the strategic planning process was going out and trying to present the fiscal health of the county to 1,000 people. That did not happen by itself. It's a great effort to try and make it happen. I think the farther we go down the line of trying to maintain fiscal health, especially with a mandate to keep the tax rate the same and continue to work towards closing that gap, we need to do a much better job of communicating to citizens in the future, and fostering that is an important part of what this position will do. So the what's in it for me, the question is what's in it for me? Why would you spend $75,000 to $100,000 a year on a position like this? Why would you grow administration to do something like this? Four of the priorities that you pointed to when you really put the kind of the gap analysis in perspective is seeking alternative revenue sources for non-mandated programs, or seek to discontinue such programs. You heard today about our efforts to seek other revenues with the Parks Fiscal Sustainability Plan. That's going to take someone to have a relationship with local businesses. Not that we're seeking out economic development, we've got another entity that does that, but to have a relationship with businesses. When I first got to the county back in 2014, I made an effort to try and go visit as many CEOs as I could to start that relationship. Since those initial meetings, I have not been able to circle back. There's too much work that I need to do administratively. Leverage consolidations and shared services, I've talked about that, and seek public-private partnerships. So one of the areas that we have not tapped into at all is leveraging our relationship with the nonprofit organizations in the county that we work with closely. Both organizations such as Elevate and Family Promise, but also organizations like the Convention Visitors Bureau, AIS, and the History Center. The relationships we have with them as of today are, I would say, arm's length relationships. And I think in the next couple of years, particularly the work that the quasi-governmental ad hoc committee is doing, those groups will need our help. We need to pass the baton. We cannot cut their legs out from under them. We have to help them to be able to become self-sustaining. The same thing is true with our nonprofit organizations, and we need to have relationships with them to be able to do that. So what I'm asking for you today is to be leaders, to take an initiative that we've never done before. We've spent this money in the past on a position that was purely administrative. There was very little or no return on investment other than making administration work more smoothly. We're trying to pick up the slack with the arrangement we have with the county clerk's office, and I think that's working sufficiently. But this would take a position that we have in the budget and transform it into something different that actually has the ability to create not only a return on investment for itself, but a total return on investment for the county. So what I'm going to ask you to do is actually make an amendment to the ordinance that we're proposing today. If you're willing to take this experiment on and give it a try, one of the things that you talked about at your strategic planning process in 2015 was that we should be willing to take risks and people shouldn't be afraid to take risks. Well, here's one. What I'm going to propose to you is that we create this position. We will be spending more than we have in the past on administration, to the tune of probably somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000. It all depends on health insurance. But what I will propose is that you make an amendment to the ordinance, that you put a footnote to this ordinance, and you say, if the position hasn't produced $400,000 or more in tax levy savings and offsets by December of 2020, that the position should be eliminated.
I'd like to amend that. Second. As stated.
There's no motion on it yet.
So the motion.
No, there is no motion, and he is correct. We did not, you started talking before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd move to approve if you're looking for
We
a
have a
motion.
motion from Supervisor Mahalik, a second from Supervisor Kelly.
So now that the motion's on the floor, now I'm asking for an amendment, just to clarify with the clerk's office here, that would put a footnote on the ordinance that if by December 2020, the position has not produced $400,000 or more in tax levy savings or offsets, it should be eliminated.
Before we do the amendment, Supervisor Sorcy, are you speaking to the motion?
I want to ask a question if I can.
The motion's made and seconded, so we can speak to that. You want to?
Dennis.
That's what's required. Okay, we don't have an amendment on the floor yet.
Okay, if you don't, then.
Okay.
Then it's the main motion.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Supervisor Sorcy.
So Josh, we're don't sit down yet. We're basically you're looking for a lobbyist, right? Is that what it is?
It will be a component of the position.
Is that mic on?
Is it not on?
It shows on.
Lobbying would be a component of the position, but it would be one piece of the entire pie. So we would ask this person or this individual, this position, to, yes, do some lobbying, but also work with local governments, work with nonprofits, and work with the business community. So I guess you'd be lobbying 4 different areas.
Lobbyists get lost in the shuffle. As many years as I've been doing this and working out of Madison, it's always, who's their lobbyist? So tell them I'm on the phone. You got to have somebody with a rapport that really has a rapport to talk to people and know their way around politics. So that's only a suggestion. So.
No, that's a great suggestion, and that was one of the things when I talked to Kyle Christensen at the WCA about this. Yep, and I know Supervisor Sorcy did as well. That's one of the things that he suggested was making sure we for those of you who are new, a lot of times, twice a year, we send a group of supervisors out to the Capitol, and they do lobbying through WCA, and it's called CAP Day. Though on those days, they usually have a legislative slate that's WCA specific. This would be very much more specific to Washington County, and it would require exactly the same type of thing. So this person isn't a silver bullet. We're going to need to still have, I know Supervisor Goddering and Supervisor Sorcy and Supervisor Hartwig all are very active on that CAP Day. We will need to have the same thing. It's not going to be this one person on that component. If this was purely a lobbyist just at the state legislature, it wouldn't work. The position would not work. But with that being one component of what they do, I think it helps actually the county board supervisors to have somebody has more time, dedicated time from the county staff to be working directly side by side with WCA. And then again, in a conversation with Kyle Christensen from WCA just this afternoon, he agreed. So they have meetings with the other counties that I talked about that have full-time dedicated lobbyists every year, and they coordinate their agendas. And this would be, Washington County would be pulling up its seat to the big kids table and having this person at the table for that. So you are 100% correct.
Supervisor Bosser.
So I'm going to make the motion using exactly the language that Josh put out there. And you have to amend the current resolution using exactly that language. If we're going to spend $25,000 or $30,000 to save the taxpayers $400,000, in my mind, that's a smart decision.
I don't think it was right.
No.
We didn't have the main motion made yet.
We have a second, Supervisor Schleifer seconds.
So in fairness, as you contemplate the amendment, if you choose not to fill the position at all, it will save, and we don't put anything in the position, it'll reduce the total county tax levy by about $75,000, or it'll be repurposed somewhere else, probably towards debt payments now. So I just want you to be clear. Yes, it's a $25,000, $25,000 to $30,000 increase from what we have historically spent, but it's still a $100,000 position when you consider all the benefits and everything. Okay, so no sleight of hand. It's $100,000 position. And the reason I picked $400,000 is not only am I proposing that it earns its money back, it doubles its money. And if it doesn't do it, get rid of it.
That's still a good deal.
I just want to be
Yep.
completely transparent.
Yep. I think it's still a good deal, so I'm putting the amendment out there. It needs a second. Oh, it has a second.
We have a second. Anybody that's called in to speak to the amendment? Supervisor Bertram?
Yeah, I hate to go back to my, the new guy theory, but, I had to go back and look at the last year's, budget. According to the last year's budget, the administration's budget was $577,000. I do agree with a lot of the things that Josh has said, such as working with the county clerk's office. I think that's a fantastic thing. It seems to, I think it would work well. I think it has worked well, I should say. I know they do some of the work already. Talking to other counties and sharing services and stuff like that to save money, I think is a good idea also. But we keep hearing, or I keep hearing this stuff, we're gonna take a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and that's how we're gonna pay for this, and that's how we're gonna pay for that. If everybody's happy with a budget for administration at $577,000, and now you wanna add something to that, that's not what I'm interested in doing. I think, again, if we're gonna share stuff and that type of stuff, I was kind of in hopes that $570,000, I mean, when we start talking about $500,000
Supervisor
for,
Bertram, I'm gonna have to cut you off. You're not, we want to address the amendment, and the amendment is put that caveat of the 400,000. I'll punch you in the next to finish your statement, but you're speaking to the,
okay,
the
I'll
resolution,
speak
so-
to it.
Okay,
I'm totally
yeah,
opposed.
you're on deck, so you can just hold that thought.
Okay.
Anybody else speaking to the amendment? Supervisor Krebs?
Thank you. For the amendment, you said by 2020, the position will save how much money again?
$400,000.
$400,000. Is that per year, total, or from today through the end of 2020?
So we'll put a dashboard together that monitors how much savings they have, and I'll have to drop exactly what that looks like. But I would plan to have basically the same way we did it with our strategic priority. The existing strategic priority said that, as I recall, by December of 2018, we will have produced $750,000 in shared service revenue. We've exceeded that by millions, and I'd put the same type of metric. Now, when we get the cash, it may be this year, it may be the following year. And if you want to be more specific, if you want to say we will have it by the December 2021 budget, that'd be fine. If that would help for specificity.
How the list is made though, it's gonna be a running total from
Same-
the beginning, from the creation of the position
Correct.
through when we're looking at keeping that position or not.
Right. So if we created a shared service agreement with Fond du Lac County on joint administration, since we want to get rid of administration, and it saved us $100,000, and it didn't start until 2021, I'd still count it as the agreement signed and it's money that's coming.
Okay, second part, and I don't know if the motion is clear in it or not, but if the savings weren't realized, would it be something where that position's just automatically gone, or is that something where it's gonna take the act of the county board to formally go back and eliminate it?
So practically speaking, the way we use footnotes is, and I'll use the example of the economic support department. So with the footnote, when we hired staff in economic support to help make the Affordable Care Act work, remember we had to hire staff because we were getting inundated with calls. There was a footnote that said when the grant funding stops, the positions stop. So this would be the same. Essentially, we're granting $200,000 to fund this position for the next 2 budget cycles. At the end of that grant, if it hasn't produced, we can't fill it again. Does that answer the question?
Kind of. I'm just trying to figure out if, because that would be, I'm trying to do the math here, is that the next county board session?
It would be the next county board, you're right.
So I'm trying to figure out if we're trusting a future board to honor our wishes to get rid of it if it is not panned, the
You are.
position of it is not panned out.
Yes, that is correct. I didn't think of that, but yes, you're right.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Jenkins to the, on the motion. Supervisor Goddard to the amendment. On the amendment, go ahead.
Okay, there's a clarification first, that you might not call it exactly to there, but Supervisor Bossert and that stated a fact of 30 or 35,000 and that, that is virtually an untrue statement. It is the full 75 or 100,000 because that 35 was already utilized by the hiring of Matt and that, and
Supervisor Goddard, you're not germane to the
well,
amendment.
he's the one that brought it with that motion, that numbers.
But that's not true.
Okay.
That's not-
That statement's not
yeah,
true.
that's-
Okay, well, on the motion there, Nat, I want to clarify, can that, instead of being a footnote, be part of the resolution? As it is a 2-year term position, production needs to be 400,000 or term ceases.
But it'll say exactly that on the footnote of the ordinance, so it's the same effect as what you're asking for. So when we've done these in the past, what you'll see, it's in the county code, it's not a resolution, it's an ordinance. So the county code will say, position, public affairs coordinator, pay grade 13, authorized 1 position, and then there will be an asterisk, and you refer to the asterisk, and the asterisk will say, if by December 2020 this doesn't produce $400,000, it'll be eliminated.
Okay.
So same effect.
Supervisor Dice to the amendment.
Yes. Josh, what do you anticipate would happen in 2020 if that person, if we see those savings and the position is continued, would another amount be set at that time that they would have a goal that again, or?
Well, I would likely ask you to pull the footnote out. Obviously, it's dated at that point in time, so it wouldn't make sense. But I think similar to how we operate the rest of the county, the expectations would exist. The problem is, it's a matter of time. What's the issue du jour in December of 2020? And I can answer you what goal we give them. So rather than it being county law that their position's on the line if they don't produce X, at that point, it will just go into their annual evaluation goals, part of the strategic priorities. It'll follow the same path every other employee would. Unless the board decided, nope, we want to keep a footnote. That's your call at that point in time.
All right, okay, thanks.
Okay, seeing no further discussion on the amendment, if you can vote. On the amendment, do we need to have it re-spoken? Is everyone clear on that? Did you read it back?
Motion to amend ordinance 3, adding a footnote stating that if by December 2020 the position has not produced 400,000 or more in revenue, that it be removed.
There was revenue or?
I'm sorry, I said to Ashley that was fine. It should say, property tax, levy savings, or offsets.
Can you read it back again? So we have it.
Motion to amend ordinance 3, adding a footnote stating that if by December 2020 the position has not produced 400,000 or more in property tax levy savings or offsets, that it be removed.
Are we clear? Okay, we can vote on the amendment electronically. The amendment passes 23-1. Back to discussion on the resolution or the ordinance. Supervisor Bertram, I cut you off. You get to finish. Sorry.
Okay. I said about most of everything I wanted to say, other than that, I just don't really see another position for administration. I think we're on a good path the way it is. Now that it's come, you're looking at $100,000 where the budget last year was over $500,000 already. I just don't think this is a proper thing to do right now. I think it's too expensive. I realize that it's always nice to think that something's gonna turn out and you're gonna save a bunch of money. But I just don't feel I think it's a stretch to put more money into administration to do this kind of stuff. That's my feeling. I won't vote for it.
Thank you. Supervisor Jenkins.
Alright, I got a lot of notes here, so let me just try and summarize best I can. So if anybody's hired a fundraiser before for a project, as I have, you probably know that it's difficult to measure building relationships. That aside, I appreciate the amendment that we made, because that does put a measurement to that. But knowing how difficult that is to measure relationships, a lot of this job is going to be doing just that. And I worry about the timing and all those responsibilities, that to see that goal is realistic. And then when some of the job description with serving as a liaison and being the face and monitoring developments and shared services collaboration, if I'm quite honest, I feel like, Josh, that's your job. That's part of your job. And Don, that's yours too as our county board chair. I understand why you're creating a separate position, because obviously you'd like to have somebody dedicated to that. But to me, I just don't, I can't justify, and I would hope that there's a great savings in the future, but I can't justify creating another admin position being more admin heavy, really just to cover jobs that you guys, in my mind, should be doing already, and we as a board should be doing. I mean, I'm a little back and forth on this one.
Thank you. Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you. First, got a couple questions. First one, Josh, you said this position or the ordinance of it kind of is in concert with the next ordinance. Can you explain that to me? I'm confused how these two are related.
Sure. So I had a couple of supervisors contact me with the concern that we're moving some of the workload from administration into the clerk's office, and then because they're separated, it looks as if it's a sleight of hand. Like we're moving some of the cost, but we're actually only talking about spending an additional $28,000. So I just wanted to clarify that the next ordinance is contemplating a reclassification of a position to assist in part with administration. That was what I was just trying to clarify.
Yeah, but I guess I understand to reclassify a position for what it's truly doing. But we're still creating a whole new position above and beyond that then.
So the existing position in the budget was a full-time administrative assistant to the county administrator position. Some of those duties are what the clerk is doing and picking up a few $1,000s in that next ordinance. The rest of it is what I was talking about, taking the budgeted money from that position and from the intern position, putting them together to hire this position.
I feel like you're just kind of mixing them a little bit more together than I'm looking at them still much more separately, especially just with the job duties that of this new full-time position. You know, it has pretty much nothing to do with the assistant to the clerk or the administrator position.
Correct. You're correct.
So, I'm gonna look at them and vote on them separately, just, that's how it works better for me.
Okay.
But as far as the job duties, just to echo what Supervisor Jenkins had said before, I read through this and I thought a lot of this the county board chair is supposed to do. You know, that go out and make connections and stuff like that. The whole lobbyist word, you know, whether to help Washington County that way, I'm fearful of that just because that only works if they're lobbying for you. And obviously we don't all think as in 100% unison here. So sometimes that person's going to be, you know, when the shoe's on the other foot, they're going to be lobbying for something that I don't agree with.
So there's a real easy way to cure that, and that is called a resolution, and you do it already. So when we send all those resolutions to WCA, those resolutions are what are the primary platform of what this person works from in every county. So you pass a resolution saying dark store theory legislation needs to be changed. They don't have a choice but to go and lobby on the behalf of the board to say that.
And that's a perfect example. I voted in the minority compared to the rest of the board on that. So they're going to be lobbying on something that I don't agree with, and now we're spending taxpayer money to
lobby for the
to
county,
keep
not for
lobbying
Brian Krebs, yes. And
for
the same
lobbying
thing
for
would be
my
true if
district.
somebody else,
Yes.
correct.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Just to answer, yeah, I do take a role in building relationships. I'm also a part-time position, and we voted, not last session, but before, to make it about a 16-hour-a-week position. I'm putting in about 40 hours or more, doing the things that I do, meeting with people, meeting with other leaders of other communities, our partners, but I don't have the expertise. I can still talk with people and build those relationships, but I also need someone to go to build relationships. How many hours did you spend just on a health department issue? And that's time that our administrator is not here being an administrator. So it really runs, not having something that's kind of really runs counter to our philosophy as a board, to look long-term, conduct strategic planning, address key issues, you know, and opportunities that we have. You know, get that shared vision of what our county is looking like now, what it's going to look like in the future. You know, working with legislators, you know, we found when we went to Washington DC, it was face-to-face with some of those legislators. Now we have a working relationship with it. It takes a lot of time and effort to do that. I don't know if I'm properly equipped to do all of it. I can help with it, but
So-
I do need backup with it, and
So that's a great example, putting together that trip to DC, and Madison's just a smaller example of the same thing. And I know several of you do Cap Day. It's a day, it's a full day. So what's happening today? Can it be done the way we're doing it? Absolutely. Are we producing shared services left and right? Yes. Can we do it better with just a little bit more money than we're currently spending? That's what we're proposing. So when we talked about going to DC and what that took, that in and of itself was probably a 60 hours of staff time to allow that to happen, to get there, to make it happen, to coordinate every component of that. That's 60 hours that I'm not spending on performance-based management, helping staff, doing evaluations. You've hired an administrator to run the operation. These are things that, yes, administrators do these things. We have the ability right now, because of the way that this position previously was, we have budget money to be able to go above and beyond. As I said, you don't have to do this. If you do it, you're just moving the ball farther forward faster. That's all. Are we gonna be producing shared services if this position is not hired? Absolutely. You put it as a priority, we're gonna get it done. We can do that much more if you hire it. That's my only point. So I think both of your points, this isn't a question of is it getting done now or not. It is, absolutely. I mean, I send you my timesheets. These are 60-hour weeks. It's not an easy task. Do we want to be able to do that and then some? That's my question. And I've got money in the budget existing that could go to this, and then we'll need a little bit more, or not, which is why I thought it made sense after talking to some of you to put a parameter on it.
And I appreciate that parameter, because that honestly is what makes this, something to think about. Because without some form of measurement, there definitely seemed like no accountability here. From my point of view, for what we're getting for a bang for our buck. I would like to see a little bit more as far as what they officially would be trying to work on and lobby for then, because that lobbyist part of, how do I know they're not lobbying for one pet little project for one other board member, but not for mine or something then? There's
fair.
the oversight on it needs, you need to define that somehow. Thank you.
I look at it as being a table setter, getting things in place so that we don't have to do the legwork to get going. As we foster these relationships, as we get, more people, we meet with the towns, we meet with the villages, we meet with the cities within our own county, and cultivate partnerships. And I'm talking partnerships because we're all equal within that, There's always been talk that the county drives, and the county is forcing this on people. It's all about partnerships and getting people to agree to do whatever it needs to be done. And, when this first came up, I was the primary driver of it. That this is something that really puts us in a position to, Josh talked about the big boy table, but it puts us in a position to make Washington County better for the citizens. And we always talk about quality of life for the citizens of Washington County. This is the way to do it. This is the way to get, things to happen in Washington County that impacts positively all of our citizens in the county. Sorry for sitting on the, Supervisor Merton.
Thank you. I guess I have some real concern about this position as well. We had an administrative coordinator who did all of these tasks. I don't know how many hours a week he worked, but we already gave our current administrator 2 additional positions. I hear things, and I listen to the comments, but I have to try to defend why we have all these extra people in administration. And I really can't see that this is a priority. We talk priorities. What are our priorities? A public affairs coordinator, I don't believe is a priority. We have the gap we're talking about. We're talking about taking money from our current operating expense and spending it for our debt. I don't know where we are coming up with the monies. We come up with them when we want to, but otherwise we make departments sit and wait for positions to be filled. We just have our priorities mixed up, in my estimation. We can do it better. Maybe we can. I'm not convinced by reading the job description that it's there. think we need to prioritize where our dollars are spent, and I cannot see them spent in this capacity.
So I just want to clarify 2 things. One, when people ask you about administrator and administration growing, I think you can confidently tell them that you voted no. But dating back to 2014, that position was not what this position is. Doug Johnson was not doing what I'm doing, and nor will the next county administrator be doing what Doug Johnson was doing. Doug Johnson had almost impossible job of trying to coordinate 10 committees and 18 department heads and still get budgets that passed. God bless him, because I have no idea how he did it without ripping his hair out. I know he tried 3 times to make it a county administrator, and I know exactly why he did it. But the job that Doug was doing and the job that I'm currently doing are nothing alike. And you can go to any county who has an administrative coordinator and see that. Now, I understand that the county board supervisors, your committees were much more active and engaged. You were managing the day-to-day operations. It's a totally different organization. So to try and correlate the 2 positions it's not realistic. It's not how it works.
Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just over the last 2 days, on Monday, I was in Madison, Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce for their policy day, spending time doing exactly what you were talking about. I know, Don, what you've done in the past, and making those connections, meeting with people, talking to others, so we can have some type of a relationship with those other than just our insular Washington County, and of course, that's not really the politicians, that is the business leaders, the Wisconsin Manufacturers of Commerce, as well as people from chambers of commerce across the state. The next day, yesterday, Tuesday, I was able to testify at the Wisconsin Property Tax Policy Commission. They had a lot of people that wanted to. I was fortunate enough to get on the list to testify and let them know how the dark store legislation is adversely affecting Hartford, is adversely affecting Washington County and the taxes we collect. And then I had an extended conversation with Craig Zadanica, the mayor of West Bend, so he could give me even more information on how it is really adversely affecting us because of how if you tax everything as a dark store rather than even its replacement costs in the case of some of the businesses he's dealing with in West Bend, it can really bite you, and it really does affect the ability for us to make sure that those people who are utilizing the services, the little businesses, are actually paying for the services. I would have loved, I've been telling that story, I would have loved to be able to come back and take that information and hand it over to somebody on the county, because having 2 elected positions and a job where I travel coast to coast and with 7 kids, I don't have the bandwidth to take all of the information I gather and to really do something with all of what I have. I'm limited in my ability to do that, and that's why having this position would be a godsend. I would like to think that I can help really find that $400,000 in savings, or be a part of that, so that, because it's a budget switch where we're actually taking it so there's only about $30,000 of additional expense. The looking at, even if you take the full dollar amount, spending 2 to save 4, I mean, I do that all day long, and I can certainly load this person up with just the contacts and the throughput of what I can bring to the table. And I know Supervisor Sorcy, you're going out, you're going to Madison and DC and all that all the time. To have somebody that we can hand this off to, again, would be a godsend from my perspective, because it would be a part of their job to follow through and to put these things to bed, get us what we need. So I'm definitely going to support it. Thank you.
Supervisor Kellum.
To put a point on it, basically, we all in this room, I think, pretty much support consolidating services, partnerships, private and government partnerships. I think we're all pretty much in favor of these things because they help us get the job done at a lower rate. As I understand it, and what I see we're trying to do here is hire a salesman, more or less. Somebody that is a professional that can do this in a much better way, that is eminently more qualified than Mr. Creekball, although I think I have a lot of respect for you, sir. You need somebody more like Mr. Sorcy, okay, who knows how to get in, schmooze people, talk to people. I've been in sales for years. And this is what Josh is leaning towards, is somebody who can develop those partnerships that you show up, hey, I know this guy, hey, we talk, we get things done. So this is a person that can basically do what we're already doing, but in a much more concentrated way. Now, we can go on like we've been. I mean, the inventor of the wheel probably was able to sell it, more or less, but it takes a real salesman to really get things moving. And I think that's the point of this position, is to have one person that's actually selling our county, whether it's our ideas in the WCA or public-private partnerships or consolidation of services. This is a guy who can concentrate on those issues and go right after them professionally and dedicate the time that Josh can't and Don can't and shouldn't, probably, because we said that this is supposed to be a part-time, not a full-time position. So if you support this, and I do, I think it's a good idea, especially with the amendment that we tacked on, that we're going to need to see results. We see these results, we got a salesman like working on commission, okay, they get the job done, great. They can't get the job done, well, we gave it a shot, right? Out they go. So I would suggest that we probably think about supporting this, because if we really like shared services, public-private partnerships, and going to the state and trying to solicit them to help us out with some things we want to do, I think somebody like this would come in really handy. Thank you.
Supervisor Dice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the county board report that we all received, there's a statement in there that this proposal is both bold and innovative. And that is what Washington County is and has been. I worked for this county for 30 years, and being bold and innovative is bred into the people that work here. My motto in my department at the time was change is a good thing. And we did a lot of changing up there. This, I can understand that people are a little leery when they first looked at this, that they may have had some concerns, but I think the amendment that Josh proposed puts that risk, makes that risk a lot easier to go ahead with this position. I'd like us to continue to be bold and innovative. So I would hope that the majority of us are going to vote for this position. I will be doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Bosser.
One thing I want to add is we've made a commitment through the Quasi-Governmental Affairs Committee to transitioning 4 agencies completely off the tax levy and to doing it in a way where they're going to be successful. This position is going to be part of that, so in my mind, that's another reason to support this. I want to see the History Center move off the tax levy in a way where they're going to be set up long-term to succeed. Same thing with AIS, same thing with the Visitors Bureau. This is going to help make that happen, so I'm going to support it because I view it as supporting the History Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Bertram.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up. You know, one of the things that you have to understand is part of this whole thing is pretty subjective. What does this person actually done or going to do where we're going to say, yep, he really gave us or she really gave us $400,000. Mr. Mahalik said that he made contacts. Did those contacts, is that enough to get something done or not? Mr. Sorcy goes to Madison how many times, to Washington DC? Does what he does, is that subjective? Is that something that we need to pass on, or is it something that he's already taken care of? So I understand that it looks good, but again, it's subjective. There's stuff that I'm sure is in the works right now that are going to happen no matter if we fill this position or not. I still really think that the cost and with what we've already put into administration, I think is just out of whack. Thank you.
I can unequivocally answer that question. We can point to dollars that are going to be in your bank account in January of 2019. So there's no doubt in my mind that it can be done. I wouldn't have put a goal of $400,000 if I didn't think it could be done. I don't do that. Anybody who's been here for 4.5 years knows I don't make promises I can't keep. And I'll be the first person to fire him if he can't do it, or her. I struggled with this position for 4 months, and Don was right when he said that he talked me into it. If you know me, and many of you have been working with me for 4.5 years, you know that my gut reaction was cut the position, eliminate it, and put that money somewhere else. But after 4 months of grinding on me, and it wasn't just Don, it was Matt, it was several other people, if we can turn around and produce $400,000, if this position can do that, and we can help the History Center become independent, we can help AIS become independent, we can help 4-H become independent, it is a no-brainer. And if we can't do it, fire them. I know government doesn't usually work that way. It has for 4.5 years around here.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, we can vote on this electronically. is 19-5, requires 2/3, motion passes. Moving on to 2018 ordinance number 4, Washington County Staffing Plan, County Clerk, and Washington County Classification Compensation Plan 7.02 and 7.03. I'll entertain a motion. Supervisor Mahalik, Supervisor Bezel with a second. Do you need any more explanation? We kind of,
I hope not.
okay. Supervisor Martin?
Yes, thank you. Can you explain to me why the grade is moved to 6 instead of 4?
I hope HR can.
Sure, so the job description, based on the new roles and responsibilities, again, it's taking what the executive assistant did before, combining some of that with what the job was before, the past job was a 4. Looking at the skills, responsibilities, and education required to do the job, based on the Charlie Carlson assessment we use currently at the county, it elevated the job by 2 pay grades. That pay, relative to what the market would pay for someone in that role, is probably around $30,000 to $40,000 below the market. Even at that, it does elevate that job based on what they're doing. So that's why we did what we did.
The previous individual did have responsibilities with emergency management. I thought that's why
10% of
it
her
was.
position, I believe, was emergency management. 8%?
No, she wasn't 8.
She wasn't, correct, she wasn't a pay grade 8 prior.
Okay.
I believe 10% of her job was emergency management, the remainder was the executive assistant role, and I don't know that she was really spending 10% in emergency management.
It was 35%.
35%?
Yeah, and I also don't know if she was spending 35%.
Thank you.
Okay. So what are the additional responsibilities?
Again, given the role, given the types of communication she's gonna need to have, the levels of confidentiality that'll be required in this role, those types of things, all weighed in, again, based on the job description.
Thank you.
Okay, see no further discussion, we can vote on this electronically. Motion passes unanimously. Our next meeting date is September 12th, 2018, at 6 o'clock p.m. Oh, I'm sorry, yep. 2018 ordinance 5, it's getting late. Washington County Staffing Plan, Information Technology, and Washington County Classification Compensation Plan 7.02 and 7.03. Motion? Motion, Supervisor Kelling, Supervisor Schleif. For a second, any discussion? I have to remember your last name again. Okay. Supervisor Blanchard, on his maiden voyage today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can somebody bring me up to speed on what this position is?
Let's get the IT man up here.
This is an application developer position. It actually does three main things for the county. First is to go through and standardize or streamline some of the processes within the county. The second is there's a number of smaller applications, about 20 of them right now that we've identified that need to be migrated within the county because of the different processes have changed within the county, but the applications are still the same. So there's a lot of mismatch between processes and applications. The third is we have an older AS400 within the county that needs to be migrated off. So we have a financial package that needs to be migrated off that. We also have a Veterans Administration program that needs to migrate off that, and a number of data elements that need to be migrated off that. So this person would actually help us do that.
Okay, is there any reason why this couldn't be handled by a contractor?
We actually have contractors in the budget right now, and actually we can do a savings by hiring this person internally and doing it versus doing it on contractors.
But you're talking about short-term projects and a long-term hire.
Actually, this is there's longer-term projects on this as well. Some of the, for instance, the financial application that we're going to be migrating off the iSeries, that will take a great deal of time, over a year's period.
We're probably talking about the next 3 to 5 years and all the different projects that this position will specifically address.
Supervisor Dice.
Can this position wait until 2019? Is there really a necessity that it be done now?
Great question. So administrative committee actually took this up. For those of you who don't know, the IT budget is the very first budget to go through the process because what happens with that budget impacts every other budget. So when we went through that process 2 months ago, we talked about this position and that question came up, except in the inverse. Can we fund it now or do we have to wait until 2019? And so Dave went back and looked, and I said, if you can find the money in your budget to do it, we'll propose it. So that's why we're proposing it today.
So he's got it in his budget now?
Correct, yes.
Cover it. Okay, all right, that answers that.
Supervisor Jenkins.
If I can ask a silly question, why does the creation of this position have to come to the board level? Can't it just be under his purvey and then you say, yep, you got it in your budget?
Sure could. We don't do it that way, is the answer. So all of our positions are approved by county law, also known as the county code. And all of them require 2/3 vote, which is why we just had the big, long discussion that we just had. So you can change that, but that's the process we currently have. So there are other counties that have a different process that would be more handbook-based, like an employee handbook that has all the positions listed, and then administrative committee, or whoever their committee is, approves and disapproves. Then it only is, do you have money in the budget or don't you, yes or no, that's it. But I think this is a vestige of the old committee structure, the old committee system, where one committee would take that department, another committee would act as a check and balance, and then the county board would be the final stop.
So is that for the creation of any position within the county?
Or change,
Janitor on
reclassification, anytime any change to a position happens, other than a title change, thank you administrative committee, we used to have to bring title changes too. So yes, any change to either the pay grade or new position, or elimination of a position. We cannot get rid of a county position without changing the county law. I know.
Well, that's dumb. I'll just end it with that. Thanks.
It is definitely 9:45.
Supervisor Gallus.
No, thank you. Director Barber, you had mentioned migration to a different infrastructure, correct?
Correct, yes.
And you mentioned ongoing, or previous and presumably ongoing contractor work. So how long has that contractor been engaged?
I've been here 7 months with the county, but my understanding is it's been within the last 4 or 5 years. We've had different contractors in here doing different projects for the IT area to migrate some of these different applications.
So pretty consistently having a contractor on versus
Correct.
bringing someone in-house that's presumably maybe more dedicated, focused, et cetera.
Yep, exactly.
Well, that's why I was just gonna ask. So there's some backlog. What future work, I think, Administrator Showman was talking about 3 to 5 years out. So there's enough work in plan for the next 3 to 5 years?
There is, yeah, definitely. There's a number of different smaller applications within the county. Right now, it's about 20 of them total that I've identified.
Can you talk about the receiving?
Okay, so this is one example. So the reseeding program, and I think Baker Tilly actually brought that up as one of the areas that they want to change within the county. The reseeding program actually has 13 different reseeding programs for the county for 13 different departments. What we're doing right now is we're standardizing that down into one reseeding program used by all 13 departments. And then we can actually then control how the money actually flows in for those receipts all the way back to the county treasurer and then into the finance area. So that's just one example. And we've been working on that for about 3 months to standardize that, because working with all 13 different departments to try and standardize that takes a lot of time and effort.
That to do. Well, if you continue to talk about efficiencies, then I'm all for it.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Blanchard.
So I've been in IT now for many, many years, decade and a half or so. you're talking about 20 different applications. You're not gonna find somebody out there who can migrate 20 different applications, especially if you're talking about an I-Series app to something else. That's gonna be very difficult. No, I wouldn't want that job. I think you're gonna be better served bringing in contractors who are experts in the specific projects that you're working on.
So I have about 30 years' experience within IT. Before coming to the county, I worked for about a $250 million company within southeastern Wisconsin, and I was the VP of IT for that. I have a number of different resources that people that want to come here and work with me and for me that have I-Series experience. So that's one of the reasons why we're creating this position, because I can get them in at a lower level than even what they're making today, and have them work for the county to actually migrate those programs.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we can vote on this electronically. Means 2/3 vote. Motion passes 23-1. Next meeting date, September 12th, 2018, 6 o'clock p.m. We have a closed session. It's getting late in the day. Probably going to be an extensive discussion. If someone wants to
Let's move that to September.
move that to September, we entertain a motion. Supervisor Mahalik, second by Supervisor Bosser.
Put it on that.
And we'll need to, any discussion, any,
Can I just ask? Did you hear that comment, Mr. Chairman?
no,
Maybe about putting it earlier on the agenda?
yeah. We could bring that a little bit quicker. I don't know what's gonna be on the agenda for September, I don't know how heavy it's gonna be, so, but we'll try to get it so that we can get it done.
I just want to make sure it doesn't mess anything up with planning and stuff if we don't take care of this now versus September. Okay. That's all I was checking.
We're good.
Yeah.
Supervisor Brandt, you need to press your white button again, so how it's off. Okay, well, you can vote. Okay, we'll vote electronically to postpone until September, our closed session. Thank you, two motion passes. We will address this again in September, earlier in the agenda. I will entertain a motion for adjournment. Supervisor Krebs, who am I call that? Supervisor Hartwig.
On top.
All in favor, Supervisor saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?